Okay, good morning, everybody. It's that time. 9:30. We'd like to call the November 20th SACOG board meeting to order. Good morning, everybody. Did I hear some chimes? I thought I heard some chimes. Okay. Oh, got it. Okay. Director Sevis, would you mind leading us in the pledge? It's nice to see you this morning. Director Sergio Sevis, would you mind leading us in the pledge? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That was a great sounding pledge, everybody. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Director Andriotta, Baines,
Present.
Boone Garbage.
Present.
Bradford,
I will
Here.
start eating.
Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Here.
Delane,
Here.
Chapman,
Here.
Clark Kretz, here, Clarici,
Here.
Desmond,
Here.
Dowden Calvillo,
Present.
Early,
Here.
Howdeshelt,
Late.
Hume,
Work in the room.
Director Hume will note you're here.
Present,
Thank you.
yes. Sorry, I'm still stunned by Director Howdeshell's.
We are.
Director Jennings. Absent Jones. Here. Kennedy. Absent Kozlowski. Absent Lauren. Maple. McCully. Rodriguez. Sander, absent. Schaefer.
Here.
Teeter. Veerkamp.
Here.
Vega. Villegas.
Here.
Vice Chair Gallardo. Here. Chair Soon.
Here.
And ex officio member Aceves.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to public communications. This is time for anyone in the public who'd like to make comments for items not on the agenda. Or are there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next, move on to disclosures. Are there any directors who wish to disclose any conflict of interest on any items on the agenda? Seeing none, hearing none. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Is there anyone who'd like to remove any items from the consent calendar for further discussion? Okay, if not, any questions? If there's no questions from anyone, I'm going to go to the public. Madam Clerk, are there anyone in the public wish to make comments on the consent calendar?
There's no public comment.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to
I'll move
approve.
to consent.
Okay, there's a lot. Okay.
Early
I think
seconds.
I think I heard Director Clarici first and then Director Early West second. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Move on to our action item, approval of the agenda 2026 meeting schedule. Madam Clerk, would you like to present that item?
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
It's fun and it's exciting to be able to present an item to you. I feel like a big kid today. So the item before you is the proposed meeting schedule for 2026. There's a hard copy of that draft calendar at your seats, and it was also provided in your staff report in the agenda packet. Staff is requesting approval of the calendar as submitted, but before you take action, I just wanted to point out a few things. As usual, there's no committee meetings in January. There will just be a board meeting. Also, we propose moving the September Policy and Innovation Committee meeting to August 31st to prevent a conflict with the Labor Day holiday. And then also in September, we propose moving the board meeting back 1 week to September 24th. And that's to avoid a conflict with the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or AMPO, conference that we're hosting that week. We do know that often when we move our meetings, sometimes there's a conflict with other conferences, but we do try to mitigate that where possible. So I did go out and look at conferences that are planned for the year that we're aware of. And then also in December, we would like to keep the Transportation and Lunar Committee meetings on December 3rd. We know that there is a CSAC conference in San Diego, and we hope that our county representatives, some of you will be able to be here, but we certainly understand if you can't be. And then lastly, one last change is we'd like to move the land use and natural resources meeting time to 1 PM instead of 1:30 PM. And then one last thing before you take action, if you could please complete the poll that's at your seats. We're looking for your availability for a peer region tour next year. And you could leave that poll at your seats or hand those to me before you leave. So again, we're requesting approval of the calendar and the accompanying resolution, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lynette. I know there was a lot you're juggling. Any questions from Lynette on this one?
Move approval.
Okay, I have a motion from Director Dowling Calvillo and second from Director Lauren, but before we do that, I just want to ask again, are there any comments or questions from the board members? Seeing none, are there many comments or questions from the public?
No public comment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Thank you.
Chairson, can
Yeah.
I just provide one further piece of instruction on the little slip of paper you have there for the peer region for? That is not a pick one, that is a tell us all that you're available.
Got it.
So tell us everything that you think you could work. We know that some of you are in recess in late June and early July. We know that some of you have a harder time even in August, but we're trying to do, which we always do, is find some dates that a majority of you are available. And we'll have a lot more information on exactly where we plan to go and what we plan to see in the coming months.
Thank you, James. I know there's a lot of vacations, I'm sure, during this time, so thanks for calling that out. Okay, next, we're going to move on to our item on the action calendar, which is our 2025 blueprint adoption. After 3 years, a culmination of 3 years, we're finally here. So this is a certification of the final environmental impact report and adoption of findings of fact, statement of overriding considerations, and mitigation and monitoring and reporting program, approval of Amendment 11 to the 2025 to 2028 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, and conformity analysis associated with the MTP SCS and adoption of the 2025 blueprint. Lisa Lynn, welcome, by the way, to SACOG. I understand you just joined us.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the board. I'm Lisa Lind. I'm a principal planner at SACOG. SACOG works closely with local governments to maintain and update our regional plan. And today we're really excited to be here bringing forward the adoption of the 2025 blueprint. This is the latest in a line of plans integrating land use and transportation to create better communities for everyone, bringing us together in a collaborative way and showing how competitive we are as a region. As a preview, the board action will have 3 separate actions, starting with the environmental document for the blueprint, the EIR, and then the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, MTIP, and conformity analysis. And the last step is the 2025 blueprint. Before we go through each of these steps, we want to cover how the plan was developed and recognize the work and milestones that got us to this point. In the update to the region's long-range plan, we've ensured that the blueprint reflects a shared vision and balances regional and local priorities. The 2025 blueprint is about creating a thriving, inclusive future. This plan lays out policies and actions to guide investments for a strong economy, a healthy environment, and opportunities for all of our residents. This plan didn't come together overnight. It's the result of the board's direction, extensive outreach across the region, and technical analysis that shows what we can achieve. It represents years of collaboration with our member agencies and partners to show how the region will grow over the next 25 years. Through workshops, polls, events, we've reached nearly 6,000 residents, over 300 elected officials, and many community organizations, agencies, and the public. We also did a tour of our cities and counties, not once, but twice. First, going to all areas of the region to kick off the process, and then again this spring as the plan was coming together. People told us they want more housing options, complete communities, safe and convenient ways to get to their jobs and destinations, and protection for our open spaces. All of this supports our triple bottom line framework. And this is especially important for a region that is growing, and we are growing. In fact, it's expected that we'll grow jobs and housing faster than state and national averages. That means planning for people at all life stages, with a mix of housing options and options also to live near good jobs, good schools, and have transportation close by. The 2025 blueprint addresses this. It builds on the infill trends we've been seeing and focuses on revitalizing center and corridor communities and supporting developing communities and our rural residential areas. For transportation, the plan covers all modes, and more than a third of the budget goes towards maintaining the existing system, from roads and transit to biking and trails. And while doing so, making it more efficient with safety and technology improvements. When land use and transportation work together, we meet state targets and create vibrant places for everyone. We are proud that this plan represents the whole region, whether you want to live near transit or prefer a suburban or rural lifestyle. And with the 2025 blueprint, we had more time for outreach and we used it. We heard from more people and we made sure that every city and town shows up in the plan. We actually have a handout for you today to really sort of drive that home and illustrate it. And we wanted to take some time in the presentation today to talk about how important this is going into the implementation phase.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I am going to walk through really a representation of what's in front of you in the jurisdiction highlights document on your desk. So we've said this now, I know, a number of times. We did a version of this at the Valley Vision Summit in early October. I also want to recognize, Lisa talked about the multiple years of work. The home committee for the blueprint plan was the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee. Starting in 2023, that was chaired by Director Bradford in 23, Director Villegas in 24, and Director Baines this year. That's a lot of work that this committee has undertaken. And I want to give Director Baines in particular a lot of credit for the following presentation and what I'm going to walk through. Because 3 years ago, I had coffee with you out in Woodland, and Director Baines said, I don't know, I get the plan. I understand it's an important thing, but I don't know how my jurisdiction really shows up. I don't understand how Sutter County is represented in this plan. And I think that was a challenge you laid down at that point, and you had a vision for this. So we said, okay, challenge accepted. And our staff worked with all of your staff in every city and county, and we asked your staff, what are the projects locally that you need help on, that you need funding for, you need assistance on, and how do those projects support the regional plan, the regional goals? And let's not just highlight those in the document you have in front of you, but let's spend the next 5 years working together to try to make those a reality. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through this. There's a lot here. I'm not gonna keep you till noon, I promise. Let's start with our downtowns. And what is amazing about this region is just how many incredible downtowns, small towns, and main streets we have. And really how much we've already done in the region to really work together on revitalizing your downtowns, helping you try to figure out how to get more economic development, more housing in your downtowns. Lincoln was one of the recipients of a Green Means Go funding award and has done a lot of work now on updating its downtown plan and done a lot of public outreach. Here's where I'm going to go a little faster. But also we have a lot of our other towns that have stepped up and said, look, we really need help to bring new economic development and businesses and housing and mixed use into our downtowns. Auburn's form-based code, again, funded by Green Means Go. Yuba City, where the board met in an offsite board meeting a couple of years ago in the Black Box Theater on Plymouth Street. Folsom's downtown is amazing and remarkable, beloved by residents, but also Folsom's downtown is going through a lot of transformation and has a lot of light rail stops. That is a regional asset and they're looking to figure out how to bring new housing and multifamily housing and affordable housing into their downtown. Marysville, another recipient of Green Means Go funding, and an Engage, Empower, Implement grant, updating your general plan and adopting that general plan for, it's been the first time in quite a while that Marysville has had a new general plan. Downtown Galt and the Galt Market and how important the efforts are there in downtown Galt. If you don't know Winters, you should. It's a great place in the region, and it's also somewhere where you're looking at actually building some of the first townhomes and multifamily housing in years, if not decades. Roseville, of course, a lot of work that has been going on, a lot of housing being built in Roseville, your commercial corridors in your downtown. Loomis and Taylor Road, we've talked a lot about Loomis. It was part of the Civic Lab program back in 2019. Rockland we went to. You went as a board in March this year. You saw Quarry Park. You saw a lot of the things that Rockland is doing. Downtown Davis is really trying to build more housing. Downtown Davis has a significant housing shortage and a housing crunch that is making basically housing unaffordable in a community that a lot of people want to live in. So we could even go on for a lot of your downtowns that you want to revitalize and reinvest in, but that is kind of where we start in these highlights. But also there's a lot of places, and I'm going to highlight 3 here in Sacramento County that weren't historic downtowns, that were incorporated in the last 20, 25 years. And let's start with Citrus Heights. We had the tour to Denver with the board last year to look at the old mall that has been revitalized. Director Schaefer was on that tour and saw the vision that Denver had and has brought that vision to Citrus Heights. This has been an ongoing, I would say, a labor of love. But we're really proud to be partnering with you on this vision for Sunrise Tomorrow and using a lot of the Green Means Go funding. Light rail stops and Rancho Cordova, Mills Crossing, again, a newly incorporated city in the last 25 years, looking for a new civic center, a new place. Even more recent developments, of course, have kind of come forward, but this is a big one. The city owns the land right next to the light rail stop and right down in Elk Grove, where we were for our board retreat a couple of weeks ago, Project Elevate, right? Elk Grove now for some time has had a vision, and you've heard this from Chair Soon, and you heard it from Mayor Sang Allen. You want to be more than a bedroom community. You want to be a place. And you are well on your way to doing that with these kinds of concepts and these visions, right? These are not easy. That is why we are highlighting these, and your staff has highlighted them. We're gonna put our shoulder into it. We spent a lot of time in the last 4 or 5 years on commercial corridors. We have an abundance of old commercial corridors in this region. We have an abundance of strip malls and vacant parking lots and places that people want to see new businesses and new housing and new reinvestment. And here's a few: Watt Avenue and North Watt Avenue, north of 80 in Sacramento County. Again, Sacramento County and SACOG working really hard to bring in some planning grants. This is a Green Means Go project, but we've also been able to secure in partnership some funding from the state of California to really re-envision and revitalize Watt Avenue, which is an incredibly busy corridor, an unsafe corridor in many ways, but has a tremendous amount of potential for new housing, new businesses, and to support the business already there. We've talked a lot here around this board table about Stockton Boulevard. This is a zigzag combination of the city and the county, but one of, I think, the sort of standout corridors that has actually seen a lot of investment, a lot of new housing, Aggie Square on the north side, but San Juan Apartments, and it is the place where we hope to see our first bus rapid transit corridor in the region, the Line 51 with Sacramento Regional Transit. Placerville Drive up in Placerville, Director Coligi gave me the tour in his electric F-150 a couple of weeks ago. I really got to feel the potholes on Placerville Drive at high speed, I will just say. But again, a vision for taking a lot of these commercial aging corridors and re-envisioning them and reinvesting in them, making safer, making more complete streets, making traffic work better. Back to Citrus Heights and Auburn Boulevard, currently under construction. I think the largest public works project that you've had in Citrus Heights for quite some time. But the vision here, and it is beginning is really sparking not just the curb to curb revitalization and safety improvements, but really making Citrus Heights a place and really doubling down on a lot of the
Well, economic development we're seeing in that corridor.
and you've got an arts district that you're trying to stand up as well that connects to it. Again, a lot of effort here and a lot of desire to really revitalize and re-envision these corridors. Of course, everybody knows Folsom Boulevard, Old Highway 50 runs from downtown really all the way out to Folsom, but lots of opportunities. And you've heard Director Sander here, I think around this board table, talk about just how challenging these corridors are to revitalize, how much effort it takes, how much political will it takes, how much financing it takes, how much loosening of regulations and red tape it takes. So a lot of these, Harder Parkway up in Yuba City, a big priority for Yuba City to see some new growth and new housing and new investment. The East Linda Gateway project in Yuba County, Live Oak and Highway 99, it's Main Street up there. Lots of work that has been going on, we know, for years. This is an ongoing challenge, but a really an important way that, like many communities here, Live Oak is really trying to balance being a thoroughfare and have traffic pass through, but at the same time have traffic stop and have Live Oak and its Main Street, which is also Highway 99, be a place and have its small businesses survive and thrive. Developing communities. We spent a lot of time last year talking about new growth areas, and I want to remind everybody that while 2/3 of the plan, the MTP SES, envisions centers and corridors and green zones and older suburbs are being revitalized, 1/3 of our future growth is in new growth areas. And it's really important, as we have talked about in this boardroom, to make sure those new growth areas are mixed use, are walkable, are places that people are going to want to live, can afford to live, can thrive in. Again, back to Director Baines and Sutter Point here, this is one of Sutter County's really top priorities. It is very, very close to the Sacramento International Airport. You're working really hard to get some of your first development there. That was proved quite a while ago, and it's just one example of many of the developing communities that are in our long-range plan. Talk a lot about housing and revitalizing a lot of commercial areas, but let's not forget that part of the future of the region, and this region, is really about our next generation industries, our tradable sectors, as you often hear about from GSAC and Valley Vision with the We Prosper partnership. So we've got to make sure that we have a plan that really supports bringing new jobs and new companies to the region, that many of you are engaged in trying to recruit here to the 6 counties, from Bosch in Roseville to Biospace and Ag Tech and Biotech in West Sacramento, just across the river, of course, to the Aggie Square development anchoring the north end of Stockton Boulevard, Woodlands Research and Tech Park, building on the Ag Tech space that you all saw in one of your offsite board meetings in downtown Woodland. The goal there is that Ag Tech is going to outgrow its space, and it's going to need a much bigger research and tech park so it can get the benefit of a lot of the spinoff of all the talent and the patents coming out of UC Davis, for example. And Wheatland, where Director Teeter hosted us just a few months ago, you heard a little bit from Lon Hadamia about the Applied Research Center. How do we use job and employment centers like Beale Air Force Base to actually have spinoffs, right? How do we take advantage of a lot of that technology and that innovation so that we can bring those just like a university off base and into your communities and really double down on the economic benefits. I hope you all will stay for the lunch, the end of the board meeting this morning. But mass transit, public transit, and intercity rail, too many projects to mention. We're going to get more into those in detail at the lunch session. But I mentioned the bus rapid transit corridor, BRT, on Stockton Boulevard, Line 51, our first BRT in the region, connecting across the river and the Tower Bridge to Sutter Health Park and the A Stadium, and perhaps maybe future Major League Baseball, with the extension of the streetcar and light rail that has been long planned and now is finally funded, fingers crossed, and we can actually make that project go. Sutter and Yuba counties with Yuba Transit, but in Yuba County, Yuba Sutter Transit's next generation transit facility, something we've been trying to help them build so that we have a facility up there for Yuba Sutter to be able to fuel and charge and house both its next generation of transit vehicles, but also potentially as a hub for EV and clean vehicles that can go beyond just the transit vehicles themselves. A lot of our transit agencies, as you know, are piloting different innovation approaches to point-to-point transit. Microtransit is being piloted and tested in communities across the region. And then finally, our mega region working group has been working really hard on two major rail projects, themselves challenging, but we got to keep our shoulders to them. The third track up to Roseville to bring Capital Corridor and frequent service to Placer County. And then finally, the Valley Rail project bringing service of the ACE, but also the San Joaquins up here for service to Elk Grove, to City College, to downtown, to Natomas, to the airport, to Marysville, and up to Chico. Safety was a big theme in the outreach of the MTPSES, and we heard this from all of our work in workshops and pop-up events and polling. The public is very, very concerned about safety on roads, and so that's going to be a big theme of when we implement our plan. Our fatality and injury rates, as you may remember, are higher than other regions in the state, and they are trending in the wrong direction. So together, we've got to tackle these. With projects like the Road 32A project in Yolo County, which is a really bad conflict between grade crossing and passenger traffic, large heavy trucks and cyclists. We had a workshop last year about quick builds. What can we do when we don't have either the money or the time we want to spend for years on a project? How do we do something innovative and quick? And we have a lot of, this is the quick build in the city of Sacramento here, but we've also got a lot of other projects happening in places like Marysville, through traffic calming and really testing things and being nimble and being quick and being innovative. And finally, in terms of both safety and traffic flow, our Trip to Green project up in El Dorado County, really important test project. If you remember when we were there last year in El Dorado County, we learned a lot about Trip to Green. It is pennies on the dollar to larger capital projects, but it's basically turning the traffic lights green at the high volume and high traffic peak weekends and times. And this project was in place for the Caldor fire when that evacuation had to start. So that is the safety element of otherwise really important, but it needs funding. It needs funding to have ongoing operations and maintenance. And finally, knitting and reconnecting our communities back together. There's many ways in which we can do this. One is interchanges. These are not necessarily the most exciting projects, but we have heard from all of you and your staff that they are really essential. We have a lot of old, outdated, and unsafe interchanges all across the region. We have many in El Dorado County on Highway 50 that need reinvestment. We have one in Loomis, the Horseshoe Bar interchange that Loomis and Placer County and PCTPA trying to figure out a fix there in Loomis. We have a new interchange in Folsom, the Empire Ranch interchange, which is important in terms of reconnecting and connecting Folsom Ranch to the south of 50 to the rest of Folsom to the north of 50. Right now, that traffic is being loaded up on other arterials that are making it really difficult. Larger, more signature projects to reconnect across the river here between Sacramento and West Sacramento, the I Street Bridge. We're delighted to say that signature project is now gotten its funding commitment from the state of California and Caltrans. And again, fingers crossed, we should be going out to bid here very soon to connect not just two cities, right, but the rail yards in Sacramento and the booming city of West Sacramento across the river. The Enterprise Bridge in West Sacramento, another project that you're going to hear perhaps about next year when we do our offsite visit in West Sacramento, but a really important one for the port of West Sacramento and actually, again, to bring and attract a lot of businesses, but also some higher tech and biotech businesses. And finally, in the small ways, but the really important ways, all of your communities have really advanced and flagged trails and trail connections and building out the 1,000-mile trail network. Here's the Cripple Creek Trail in the Arcade Cripple Creek Trail in Citrus Heights. Here's part of the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail that will connect soon, we hope, West Sacramento down to the Delta community of Clarksburg. Here's the Dry Creek Greenway up in Roseville. Here are the trails that are partly there, but we need to help Sutter County and Yuba City build out the trail network up in Yuba City and Sutter County. And finally, just want to end on balancing that future growth, those high rates of growth, that new development in places like Placer County, who very much highlighted the need to balance housing and new development projects and new growth areas with really working landscapes, and the importance of your ag lands, the importance of your forests and timber, the importance of flood control projects and resilience projects. So rounding it out there with Placer County. I know that's a lot. Believe me, we didn't even include all of the projects that your jurisdictions wanted to put forward. This is the first time that we've done this. We'd love any feedback on it. And we're going to make it an even bigger part of a more formal rollout of the plan next year. So stay tuned, but I hope it gives you at least some sense of the fact that this is not, this plan, this 2025 blueprint is not a SACOG plan. This is a regional plan. This is not SACOG's vision. This is our vision. This is your local staff and community organizations and stakeholder groups really coming together to say, this is the future of the region. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging, but we work together. We can be a team and we can achieve the vision working that way. So I hope you appreciate this, and I'm going to hand it back to Lisa for your finals tee up for your action.
You can see why we're excited. Thank you to everyone for all the work that you put in. Thank you for the team that's here and listening in. There was a lot of hard work. Okay, so we're ready. The blueprint, the appendices, and the associated documents provide the support for the process and the decision before you today. Staff recommends adopting the 2025 blueprint with the actions shown on the slide and described in detail in your staff report. Again, these are 3 actions, starting with certifying the final EIR with the required findings and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. SACOG did prepare a programmatic EIR for the 2025 blueprint. It was available for public review, and all of the comments and responses are included in the final EIR. The next action is approving the MTIP amendment. We keep the blueprint and the MTIP consistent with each other, which is why an amendment to the MTIP is also one of the action items today. And we're required to analyze the MTIP and blueprint to meet air quality standards through the conformity analysis included with the MTIP. Finally, staff's recommendation is to adopt the 2025 blueprint. Approving the 2025 blueprint means we'll move the plan forward to our state and federal partners to approve in the next few months. This plan represents a remarkable level of effort, and it sets the stage to move forward with programs and policies that help our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and James. I wanted to take a moment to just relish in this moment because first of all, appreciate those highlights. It's a great reminder of all the work that continues to happen around this region. I want to thank, on behalf of this board, I want to thank James, you and your SACOG staff, all our member agency staff, the stakeholders, like you mentioned, the community. Again, 3 years, this is a culmination of all that work. And kudos to you, James, and your leadership team, especially for making 2 times rounds to all of our jurisdictions. I mean, that in and of itself is worth mentioning. And this document, I mean, this is more than just transportation, right? We sometimes people say, hey, we should only be only a transportation agency, but you see from these highlights, we truly are making a broader difference than just transportation. I mean, our equity economy and the environment, connecting our communities, the economic development that ensues because of transportation projects. The fact that this region has led in housing over the last 8 years, the state in development of housing is a testament of itself. I finally want to thank this board right here, all of you, whether you just joined or you've been here forever, the work that you put in, you representing your communities. Us getting to this point is proof that how we can all come together, right? Rural, suburban, urban communities to find compromise and for the betterment of our entire region. And you think about all these things that are happening right now, the things that we're laying the groundwork for. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years based on the decisions and compromises that we've done today for this document. And so anyway, I'm really excited. I want to congratulate and commend this entire board on their work. So
Mr. Chairman.
yeah, go.
In making a motion to approve the recommended actions, I want to echo your comments. This has been, I'm going to say, an honor, a privilege, right, to go around the region and really understand the region. And what I see here is something that requires, is a requirement, but it is also just an incredible advertisement, economic development tool for our region, to really have people who, you made reference to GSAC and others, to really understand the fiber and the core that connects this region together and is really a catalyst and could attract folks. Will there be any kind of communication about this? I mean, TikTok's too short, but Ken Burns is too long, but something, I mean, this just can't, I mean, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Your slideshow, this is beautiful. And we
Well,
need to
yeah,
somehow
first of all,
promote it.
I want to recognize all of our staff, right? And it's hard to sort of name names, but I do want to just give a big thanks to Lisa here, who did join us very recently and had to basically shepherd this whole thing in the final stretch, and she's done it incredibly admirably. Stay tuned on a communication strategy. So you have before you sort of the adoption and the action today. You don't have the final plan, the polished plan. We have some other elements around these local highlights because they have been so resonant already. So stay tuned. We're going to have a larger push and a larger communications push that you can all be involved in probably early next year. So this is not the last time you will hear about this, believe me.
I move the recommended
Yeah.
actions.
Thank you, Director Aldershot. I heard a second over here. Oh, Director Hume, seconded by what?
Oh,
I think
Oh.
they have to be taken separate.
Hold on. Yeah, question.
I just have a comment. I didn't mean to interrupt anything, but I have a comment.
Okay,
Yeah,
please, go
thank
ahead.
you. This has been what? A couple of years in the 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And I will confess that over those 3 years, I haven't been thinking about an issue that I think is an emerging issue that should be taken into consideration in any long-term planning. I've been reading more and more lately about depopulation, and that's a global phenomenon as well as a national phenomenon. Right now, I've been looking at things. Public Policy Institute of California did an article in 23, and there's there's more and more of these articles emerging. We all know the replacement birth rate is 2.1. Right now, it's 1.52 in California. And there's strong evidence. In fact, I think it's science now that as you move from an urban environment to a suburban environment to a densely urban environment, the birth rate declines significantly. And the Air Resources Board has us doing a lot of infill and shooing any suburban development. My suggestion, without making too much of this right now, although I think much needs to be made of it, would be that depopulation be considered in any long-term planning for our region, as it should be for the state and the nation. It's an emerging crisis. For example, in China, they expect the population to decline over the next 30 years by as much as 500 million. And it'll be disruptive to international relations and what have you. I'm just talking about here. But it would seem that depopulation should be considered. We're going to be talking about the economy as being a significant factor in all our planning. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Director Branscombe. I mean, by 2050, we're expecting 580,000 people to come here. So I don't disagree with you. I just think the timing maybe.
Well, you do disagree then.
I don't disagree.
I
Eventually.
wasn't looking for a debate. If you want to debate, I'll debate.
Well, I'm just saying, you want to comment, I'm just re-commenting. So.
No, you're arguing.
Chair Sander, just want to say that, one of the things we do, and it's been 3 years, so it might feel like it's in the rearview mirror, but we start every long range plan with a demographic forecast. And that's actually very important. We don't just do it ourselves. We bring a lot of people in to look at demographics, to look at birth rates, death rates, migration rates. And what you'll see, generally speaking, and you got 5 years till your next big plan update, but we're going to be beginning the demographic forecast the next time around is we project pretty higher growth rate than the rest of the state and the rest of the nation for the next 10 to 15 years. And then we project it slowing down. So we project the same, I think, trend that you're referencing here in this region. So our 580,000 number is coming on the sooner side, and then we do see a slowdown. We can certainly talk more about that in future meetings.
That was my point. All right, Director
This
Baines.
question for council, can the recommended action be taken in one motion?
So I'm okay with one motion, but let's do 3 separate votes, because what I'd like to do is make sure we get the EIR certified
votes.
before we vote on the next 2.
3 separate
But if we
votes?
just
Three
say-
separate motions.
Yeah,
So 3 separate motions. Okay, but
I'm okay with one motion. Let's just say, all in favor of 1, all in favor of 2, all in favor of 3. We can do it
Okay.
that way pretty quickly.
So in that case, can I second that motion?
You can.
Second.
okay. Then before we do, I have a motion from Director Haldeshell, second Director Baines, and we'll do the votes for 3 separate calls for votes. But before I do that, are any comments from the public?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back. If there's no further comments from the board members, I'll call for all separate ones. So first for the certification of final environmental impact report and adoption of the findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Okay, motion carries. At the end for our second for the approval of the amendment 11 to the 2025 to 2028 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program and conformity analysis associated with the MTP-SCS. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? All right, and finally, for the adoption of the 2025 blueprint, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody.
That's a lot. That's a big week in the month.
All right, and then we will
Where's the cake?
definitely move on or look forward to implementation of this blueprint over the next several years. And speaking of implementation, let's go to our informational item. This is tracking blueprint implementation through the regional monitoring program. Mr. Ballard Rosa, how are you doing? Good morning.
Very well. Thank you, Chair Soon. Yeah, tough act to follow. As you mentioned, 3 years of work but no break. We're already talking about blueprint implementations. You take the action and you hear it first, right? Blueprint implementation. I think, in the development of this plan and the action just took, what struck me is just, right, in those local stories and projects, as those are being built out, really then you see in the plan region-wide, the benefits to your local communities, right? Across a range of topics, transportation, the built environment, health. But how do we know if we're making track and progress on those goals of the plan you just adopted? We, of course, have a monitoring program here at SACOG, which is tracking all of these things, all these blueprint indicators in real time. We stood up a dashboard last year. I just want to remind you all that we do have that interactive dashboard up on our webpage. It has about 75 different indicators across the themes of the blueprint. But what we also do is we want to take a time to do some reporting on it, get a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the key themes that we're seeing. So what we've done now is we're doing what's called an annual progress report. We're honing in on a specific topic that we've heard is really important in the long range plan update. So for 2025, our progress report, which came out last month, and that's your attachment A in your item here, is really focused on housing. Housing was really this critical issue we heard from focus groups, from surveys, from polling, from you as the board, from community members. And of course, it's no surprise, we know how impactful that is in your community. Housing is one of the cornerstone pieces of the blueprint plan. And you see what you just adopted today, how housing is integrated into all of that work. So what we've done is we pushed out our 2025 progress report that really focused on recent trends in housing. This is a repeat of the presentation from Lunar. So those on the Lunar committee, I did update a few slides, so extra credits if you catch those changes based on your comments. But we thought there was value in coming back to the full board to be talking about housing and how it relates to the plans and policies and you just took on the blueprint. Of course, we know housing is a critical issue. So I'm not going to dwell on some of the challenges and retread what we all know. I'm just going to maybe present some of these challenges in a little bit of a new light, maybe some data you hadn't seen. We're very familiar of housing costs in California. What we also do, and I apologize, I know the text is a little bit small, but what we do is we also compare housing and a bunch of other metrics to other peer regions across the nation. And this goes back to our work with some partners, Valley Vision, GSEC, and Brookings Institute 5+ years ago, talking about mid-sized regions and how they're different from large metropolitan areas in some ways, and really thinking about how, in many cases, some of our peers are places like Austin and Charlotte, North Carolina, right, Indianapolis, mid-sized regions that have a lot of similarities to us on the economic development side of things. So when we look at this mid-sized set of peer regions, 17 of them, right, we see that home prices in our region are the second highest nationally. There's some advantages of that. If you're a homeowner and you want to sell, that's a great thing. If you want to take out some equity, that's a great thing. But we heard through all of that outreach, right, the ability to break into the housing market is a critical issue for so many residents in our region. So again, it's a hard barrier to get in with home prices, second in our peer group. Similar story for rents, and we'll see in a couple slides just how impactful rents are. Renters are very susceptible to paying a large proportion of their housing or their income towards housing. And so we see in our region, third highest rents of our peer group. We know there's disparities, and they're real, and they're really hard to get around, and they're longstanding. This chart looks at what we call housing cost burden, or thinking about how much each household pays of their income towards housing. And so HUD and many others define housing cost burden of those households that pay at least 30%, or roughly a third of their gross income. So before taxes, before anything else, gross income on housing. So if you pay at least a third, housing cost burden. If you pay 50% or more, severely housing cost burden. So the green you see on this chart's the 30 to 50%, and the blue is above 50%. And you see housing cost burden, right? A key issue across the region, but in particular, our communities of color, our Black and Hispanic communities, right, are paying much more of their income towards housing, which means much less for everyday necessities. As I mentioned earlier, right, the renters in particular across race, ethnicity, half to almost 2/3 housing cost burden. So when you see those rises in rent and those high rents, right, the impact that has on those households and their budgets. Home ownership, we know, is a longstanding issue, right? And this is a conversation we had in the Lunar Committee about how far back we go. So we actually drew this time series back and extended it out a couple years to get the full picture of what's been going on, because we've seen some really positive increases in home ownership in the past few years, which is incredible and it's worth highlighting. But if you go back in a little bit of a longer time series, we're about where we were prior to the Great Recession. And indeed, if you look at the year 2000, our homeownership rates are about where they're at. So, it's important to recognize market cycles, but again, and celebrate the increases we've seen in the last few years, but also put that in the longer context of, has there been much impact in homeownership rate in the past 25 years? And then the last slide on the challenges, because there's a lot to point to that's really positive, right? It's really critical to be thinking about housing in relation to income. And so we do the same thing where we look at housing costs in relation to income and see that change through time. This is another slide we updated in response to the Lunar Committee comments to make sure we have a full-time series. You can see the effect of the Great Recession, right? And then housing actually became more affordable in the early 2010s, but then it kind of got back to where it was, where housing prices really outstripped income, especially into the last few years. But you see it finally in 2023, right, that level coming down where incomes are rising, but housing costs didn't rise as quickly as income, which gets us to the point we want to talk about today. Really the recent momentum we've had in housing in this region and how that aligns with the plans and policies that you just adopted in the blueprint. So if you just look at new housing built in the region, right, we're at an about 2-decade high, 12,500 units built last year. And most of the stats in this section are going to be focused on 2024. I know we're almost at the end of 2025, but the full year we have of 2024, that's what we're going to be focusing on. As was pointed out, though, in the Lunar Committee, right, we're responding to a decade plus of really slow housing production. So while this 12,500 units that was built collectively in the region the last year actually exceeds the annual level in your blueprint plan, right, we know there's more work to do to respond to that backlog. And so different planning processes treat that different ways, but we also wanted to highlight that comment from the Lunar Committee, right, about responding to a decade of slower production too. So while it's great, we're exceeding right now the near-term blueprint projection, there's still obviously more work to be done. Chair Soon mentioned this in some of his comments. When you think, though, about housing in the state, right, really highlighting the role of the Sacramento region, right? If you put it on a per capita basis, so new housing per 1,000 residents, the Sacramento region has outpaced the state, not just this year, but as Chair Sue mentioned, 8 years in a row, right? And we've tracked this back to about 2001. So I think when we look at 18 of the last 24 years, right, the Sacramento region has produced the most housing per capita of any region in the state. So when we're talking to our state partners, that's something we definitely communicate and illustrate. And when we say, is this plan achievable and attainable, right, this is something we can point to, but we think it's a really important talking point for all of us to collectively have. And then really tying it to the blueprint itself, right, the variety of housing product types coming online, right, is something we've really seen some strides in recently, where we know there's a variety of needs of housing across the region, large single family, smaller single family, and attached product. So you see that reflected in these bar charts where the large single family is the green, the smaller single family is the blue, and the attached product's the pink, right? And in the last couple of years, you've really seen a balancing out of the type of housing that's coming online. So that, and last year, nearly the same share of new units that came on in the last year were attached compared to large lot single family. In addition to this sort of this all-time high we've seen in attached housing, these are duplexes, these are condos, these are apartments. It's a breadth of housing in that category. We're also seeing all-time highs in other types of housing, right? A diversity of housing that's coming in that's helping build up that upsurge in units we've seen. So we've talked a lot about accessory dwelling units or ADUs, and we've seen a 15-fold increase in ADUs, right, since 2018. And in a lunch a few months back, Vice Chair Gallagher, I remember you saying like how in Rockland, right, some of the new development coming in, they're building ADUs as part of it. And then we're seeing ADUs in a variety of place types as something that developers think the market, that the buyer is really looking for. And you see that reflected in, almost 1,000 ADUs that the region built last year compared to under 100 just a few years ago. And of course, we have Green Means Go, the region's collective infill accelerator, where we spent a lot of time working very closely with your local staffs, and you on your local council and board adopted your green zones, right? Your key commercial corridors, your key infill areas. You did that up front before there was even a Green Means Go program, before there was even a state or federal investment, right? You did that up front, working with your community, saying these are the places we think are primed for this infill growth through this attached housing, right? And look at what we've seen in the last couple of years. We've seen the number of units in green zones increase year over year. We've also seen the share of units region-wide that are going in green zones increase year over year. And we've seen empirically, right, that these green zones are the areas that can deliver on that breadth of housing type that the blueprint depends on. Where green zones are much, much, much more likely to be building that attached housing product, right? About the new units coming in green zones, about over 3/4 of that are the attached housing product. Outside of green zones, right, it's a much smaller percentage. So that's really the key takeaway, right, of this variety of housing coming online, especially the last 4 or 5 years, attached housing product, ADUs, right, green zone development that complements the single family, large lot, and small lot, which continues to be a really critical part of housing in our community, right? But if we see those together, right, as a much more breadth of housing coming online. And then the last on the progress, right? And because of this breadth of housing, we're starting to see some strides in housing provided at all income levels. It's a very hard thing to do. We do better than most regions in the state in bringing online units that are available to very low income and low income households. It's a hard thing to do, but you can see the blue and the pink at the bottom of those charts are housing available for very low and low income, and that has been increasing through time. Still more work to be done, but it's trending in the right direction. Even with all this progress, right, there's still work to be done to make sure that we're meeting the objectives and the assumptions of the 2025 blueprint. So we still need to make sure that, right, we stay focused on Green Means Go and other efforts to get continued growth in sort of our centers and corridors, our existing communities, and in addition, making sure that that breadth of housing, single family large lot, single family small lot, and attached housing continues through time, because we still have we still need to see that sustained through the course of the blueprint. So I know there's a lot to throw at you around housing, and I went through it quickly, but just a reminder that we're standing up this progress report series to really delve into key issues, and we're trying to push it not only to your board, but to partners across the region. We're engaging with media and with partner agencies, right, to be talking about these trends I just presented with you. Last year, we focused on sort of what's new, because we know COVID was a big disruptor for transportation, but other factors. Today, we're talking to you about housing. Next year, it's sort of a to be determined, so we're always welcome to think about what thoughts are most impactful for you as the board and your community, so we think about 2026. Chair Soon, that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Garrett. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Director Hume.
Not a question, but just a comment. And wouldn't be a SACOG meeting if I weren't a little bit contrarian about something. So I'd just like to point out on those bar graphs that showed the year over year production of housing units, when you look at the concave parabolic curve, yay, we are twice as much as we were at the low points, but we're still half as much as we were at the beginning of this century. And if we do not recognize that and do not recognize how to both reduce the internal and external constraints put on that delivery, some of which is done by our agency, some of which is done by the state, some of which are done by documents such as the one we just adopted. If we don't figure out how to break loose the floodgates and get more housing production, not just of ADUs, but of all housing types, we will continue lighting piles of cash on fire, chasing capital A affordable housing, rather than producing all housing, thereby making housing more affordable. That's a simple fact of supply and demand economics. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Vice Chair.
You know, just on the ADU subject, it's been shocking to me the tremendous numbers we have, but we do not get any credit from on our RENER figures out, and because they are basing it on what we had done previously. And we all knew there was going to be this change as builders are actually building them with them, and then individuals are adding them into those properties. But that was really a frustration for us, because literally I think we got credit for like 6.
Any other comments from the board? Oh, yeah, Director Petrie, yeah.
I have a question. Is there any idea of how much of this housing stock, current housing stock, is owned by private equity? Because my guess is, I agree, we need to build more housing, but those years, 2, 3, 4, there was a lot of funny money floating through the system back in those days. They were pumping a lot of capital into house building. And of course, that's why you have that rather precipitous drop when the Great Recession hits, and it just wiped that out. And a lot of that housing stock got bought up by private equity, which morphs in, I don't know about here, but I know if you go to some communities, especially like college towns and places like that, Vegas, thank you very much. It morphs and really screws up kind of your housing availability and housing costs and a whole bunch of stuff. So I'd be curious to know about that. Plus, I'd like to see that graph, because it includes 2, 3, 4 crazy time. What it looked like prior to that for about 2 decades, and see those numbers running into that. Because my guess is that sort of if you took the curve out of there, those years 2, 3, 4, 5 are pretty anomalous. And that prior to that, when you go into the 90s, I mean, we were building houses, don't get me wrong, there were houses getting built. But my guess is if you're trying to shoot for those numbers, that's going to be too crazy. But if you're trying to shoot for the median of a historic growth, then that would make more sense. But I agree, we do need to build more. But I wouldn't, those years, the early aughts, heady times. Anyway, that's it.
There were some other interesting dynamics that were happening at that point in time.
Yeah.
There was this thing called technology out of the Bay Area. We have, this region, has benefited from at least 4 equity refugee waves. Equity, that's right. Where people just say, yeah, I can buy 2 houses in the Sacramento area. The radio was filled. Remember radio, right? Before podcast was filled with, no down, 0, interest rate loans. I think we ended up with that fiscal cliff. 2008 when I worked at Lennar, 7, 8 when I worked at Lennar.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, it's more. There's some anomalies in there that are due to the economy, due to the easy access to financing and cash. And I know I don't know what the rest of the region is experiencing, but we're starting to see a very significant slowdown in the number of permits and new housing.
And bringing it back to this plan, the Green Means Go program, I think we've seen tripling of housing built through that. So I think that's a proof of concept that when we first got the legislature to fund that, I think the successes we had over time demonstrate a path to help our communities build build housing. And then we're going to see, as we implement the blueprint, as we provide funding to our transportation projects that support the infrastructure for more housing, how we can make a difference in the region and hopefully continue to lead the state. I do agree, like there are some, institutional challenges that we have in terms of cost and processing through permits, and I think maybe however we can play a role in the legislature, I think we should try to do that. But we'll see if the difference we can make going forward. So thank you, Garrett, for this presentation. Appreciate it.
Chair Soon, can I just build on those? Between the blueprint adoption that you just went through and these numbers, we often are in here saying, boy, this is a very ambitious plan. This is going to be hard to do. Green means go is really going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. And that is absolutely true. What you just saw in those numbers is all of you at a local level producing housing and getting onto a trajectory. While I agree with you, Director Hume, right? Still not digging out of our hole, but that upward trajectory and that mix of product type is something to celebrate. And what we're hoping, and Chair Soon, you just mentioned, the legislature and RENA, right? We are a pro-housing region. We build more, as you saw from Garrett's slides, per capita than other regions, and we have done that now. We've had the lead in that. I met with a state official a couple of years ago on housing, and that person said, like, well, you guys are really kind of anti-housing. Like, no, we're not actually. We're pretty pro-housing, and it is not easy to solve this challenge, but we're absolutely dedicated to solving the challenge. And I do think that part of what you saw there is intentionality. Finally, the state gave all of you at the local level some funding to do some planning and to actually make it easier. Finally, right? We need to keep on the state for that. So this is really good news. When some of our trends regionally are not working going the right direction, these are. So I want to make sure that you all are thinking about that and have it top of mind, especially as we get into next year and working on a lot of our state policy issues around housing.
Yeah, thank you, James. All right, we'll move on to our report item. Any board members have any reports they'd like to make?
I do.
Yeah, Director Warren.
I just wanted to report that I went to the Impact Conference in Portland, and it was an amazing conference about transportation. And I think we should all go, maybe not next year when it's in Canada, but when it's back in our region. It's just really inspiring and full of great information.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that.
Great, Chair.
Yeah, Director Holstein.
I am wearing the Placer Valley Soccer Complex scarf. Tomorrow night, it will be our grand opening at 6 o'clock. We'll have youth clinics by Sacramento Republica RFC and Iron Rose, that's the women's team. Kids zones, field hockey, lacrosse, flag football. That's a growing sport there, isn't it? Foam blasters, I'll be there in the foam blaster drop-in game. Huh?
Can we blast you with phone?
I would be an honor.
I'm there.
Anyway,
Everybody signed up.
Most of you may know, but we have a 10-field all-weather complex that 10-field all-weather sports complex. I think that there's a game called Quidditch, but there's another game that has a different name, lacrosse and everything. So we're really excited to kick off this tomorrow night with a grand opening at 6 o'clock in Rosewood.
Excellent. All right, any other comments? Okay, the next item is receive and file. I have a comment for receive and file to James and the team. The regional trail implementation strategy update. I definitely would like to stay involved in that. The governance of that trails. I mean, we all have a trail program in our community, so would love to be a part of that. Yeah.
I just have a couple of updates.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, I know I've talked a lot this morning. Probably tired of it. So just a few before, and then back to you in a sec here. Just a reminder with your milestone action this morning and adopting the plan. we now have basically 5 years to implement this plan. So part of those local jurisdiction highlights are all about trying to be intentional how we are going to spend the next 5 years implementing our plan. Your next plan update, your major plan update is not till 2031. So stay tuned for that. We are going to be working with the Strategic Planning Committee and coming back to you in January with what the next 5 years looks like. Part of that will be, as I mentioned, advocacy. So if you've seen in my executive director update, and I know Chair Dowden Cavillo knows this very well, and Director Villegas too, on the CalCog side of things, we just had our third large table discussion yesterday with a lot of statewide stakeholders from labor, BIA, housing, environment on updating SB 375. Because as you know, and remember you gave us a unanimous action last year to go forth. We're working really hard on that. Between that next year, SB 375, and then I would just say at the federal level, there's a lot of funding uncertainty. I don't have to tell you that, but in transportation and actually public transit, which is why I'm making a pitch right now for you to stick around for the lunch. That's going to be big. Your next board meeting is December 18th, your next full board meeting, last meeting of the calendar year. On your agenda, that meeting on December 18th will be you taking action on the election of a chair and a vice chair for 2026. So stay tuned. Please fill out that peer region poll before you leave. Also, Lynette just surveyed you all yesterday about committees next year. If you wanted to move committees, you can. So make those preferences known to Lynette, and that's my report. So back to you, Chair Soon.
Yeah, thank you, James, for that reminder. So the transit folks aren't going to be here till 11, I understand. So hope you all can stick around, maybe take some phone calls or do some things outside and join us back here at 11. We're going to continue the meeting till then. We're not going to adjourn. Vice Chair, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just because it's just too much fun to pick on Bruce, but I just wanted to point out and a little bit of brag. Rockland was playing volleyball, girls volleyball was playing Wood Creek High School out of Roseville.
Yeah.
And for this division, or for the section championship, Rockland won. They both went on to NorCal's. Wood Creek High School will be playing for the state championship and in Division I. I'm sure it's because their principal, Sue-Ann Gallardo Bell, is the leader. And Rockland will be playing in the open division for the state championship. They won the NorCal. First time ever a public school has won the NorCal and division, beating Walter Midden. So I'm really proud.
Congratulations. That's awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you at 11. Hope you can stick around. Thank you, everybody. If not, we'll see you on the 18th.
I might actually get some work done today.
I have lines in my car for you.
Awesome. Yeah.
This carbs thing, is that a recent development or is this a
Yeah, I mean, it is the lifestyle, but it's recent. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I will do like some brown rice, right? Some protein pasta. Yes, but yeah, no, I'm 28 now, which is, significant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this is a great conversation for us to have today. So Director Jennings.
For me to introduce myself, is that correct?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, for those who don't know me, you've missed out on a lifetime of opportunity. My name is Rick Jennings. I'm from Washington, D.C., University of Maryland, came to California in 1976. Proud member of the Sacramento community in this entire region. Happy to be here. I am also the Sacramento Regional Transit Chair of the board, so happy to be here to listen to this conversation.
Thank you. Dr. Hume.
Pat Hume, Sacramento County Supervisor, former Elk Grove City Council member, RT board member, as well as Paratransit Inc. board member. That's everything that's relevant for today.
Dr. Nguyen.
Okay, let's see. Pamela Buellhan, and let's see, I'm currently on Alton City Council.
Director Bullhound, can you use your mic as your
Oh,
mic?
yes,
Yeah, thank
okay.
you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, again, this is Pamela Buellhan. Currently I'm on Alton City Council. Before that, I was treasurer, but then I initially got on council in 2011 in a special election. I won with a total of 50 votes. It was a vote by mail. And I ran against two ex-mayors. One of them was subject of a grand jury investigation. But in addition to that, I sit on Alton Museum Board, and in most of my life, I've lived in the Delta. So when I was born, we lived on Sherman Island, then we went to Tyler Island, and for the last multiple decades, I've been inside Alton. So that's about it.
Brian Veerkamp, District 3 Board of Supervisor for El Dorado County, my third term after a 4-year hiatus. Been involved with SACOG 8 years, the first 8 years, and thoroughly enjoyed it. El Dorado Transit Agency also, and El Dorado County Transportation Commission. And John and I mule shared from here to there all the time, and just a great opportunity, and love to represent our county and our community. So thanks to staff as well for hosting this.
Jill Gallardo. I currently serve as the mayor of the city of Rockland, and these guys have way better stories. I'm not sure that I have anything that exciting to tell you. But in my background in transportation, I retired as the director of transportation for the Elk Grove Unified School District. So I bleed yellow buses.
Awesome. Darren Soon, Chair, but also alternate on the RT Regional Transit Board, Elk Grove City Council member. Look forward to continuing this conversation between our transit agencies and SACOG.
Bruce Howdeshelt, born in Foggy Bottom. If you know, you know. George Washington Hospital, PG Community College, University of Maryland, Fear the Turtle, right? Former mayor, City of Roseville, current council member, chair of the Capitol Quarter Joint Powers Authority.
Martin Bain, Sutter County Supervisor, Chair of our Land Use and Natural Resources Committee here on SACOG Board, and Vice Chair for Sutter Transit Authority.
Gary Bradford, Yuba County Supervisor, representing Plumas Lake and Wheatland, and freshman board member at Yuba Sutter Transit, and a strong advocate for North Valley Rail.
Hi, I'm Jessie Lauren. I serve as council member in the city of Winters. This is my 9th year. I'm also moving into my 2nd rotation as chair of YOLO Transportation District next year. And I'm current transportation chair for our transportation group. I'm originally from Southern California, and I am a 30-year transplant up here in Northern California. Yeah, that's it.
I was born in a log cabin. Hi, everybody. I'm John Clarici. I am on the Placerville City Council. I am this year's mayor. I have served 2 terms with a 4-year hiatus because people didn't like me. And then they liked me again, so they brought me back. I'm on the I've been on the SACOG board before. I was on it before, and I'm back. Let's see. A proud graduate of the University of California at Berkeley, class of 1981, degree in forestry. Yeah, really, a degree in forestry. Go Bears. And I'm on the transportation committee for this august body, and I actually do transportation planning as a profession now. So I serve as the executive secretary of the Lassen County Transportation Commission under contract with Lassen County and the city of Susanville. So all these things are near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. I'm Tim Schaefer. I sit on the Citrus Heights City Council. I was mayor in 2023. I was born in a log cabin on the beach, Santa Cruz. Just kidding. Citrus Hospital. And so I've been on this board since 2023, and I look forward to hearing more about transit. I also sit on the Transit RT for.
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Chris Flores, Chief of Staff and VP of Real Estate at Sacramento Regional Transit.
That's it?
Wildwood Elementary School. I don't know the year.
Okay, well, Autumn Bernstein, Executive Director, YOLO Transportation District. I don't know if I should follow Chris's example, but I like to share random facts too, so I'm going for it. Also was born in a log cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains. My parents were hippies, hence the name Autumn. My dad was a bus driver for Willie Nelson when I was born. True story. True story. So transportation's in my blood. Other fun fact about me, though I am born and raised in the Bay Area, I'm a Dodgers fan. Go Dodgers.
Okay, next. No, I'm kidding. I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
And a two-time graduate of UC Davis. Go Ags.
Hello, Matthew Mock, Executive Director of the Ubisoda Transit Authority, formerly the Executive Director of the El Dorado County Transit Authority and the Transit Director for the City of Folsom.
Can you verify any log cabin stories?
I have no association with any log cabins whatsoever.
Hi, I'm Greg Bowen. I'm the transit manager for the city of Auburn. I guarantee I'm the newest at transit. It's just been 1 year. So I'm learning. This is my first meeting with SACOG and I'm glad to be here. Last minute change. Mengel Dean was supposed to be here. He had something come up, so he threw me in. So thanks for having me.
No, bus tons. But Mike. You guys all have to go too then. I'm Mike Maurer, I'm SACOG General Counsel. No log cabin story, just born in a boring old hospital in Southern California. And I'll follow Autumn's lead and I won't say anything about the World Series. I'll just leave it at that.
Casey Lazan, and I'm Deputy Executive Director for Programs here at SACOG.
It's okay. Same button, different person. Eric Johnson, Deputy Executive Director of Operations, born at the now shuttered Santa Cruz Community Hospital.
I did not expect the sharing.
This is great though.
But given the door has been opened, James Corliss, Executive Director of SACOG, my great grandfather worked down the coal mines in Lancashire, England, and didn't want that for his kids. So he saved up some money fixing clocks and watches and bought a bus in the 1920s, and the bus became Corliss's Motor Services. And my family, my grandparents ran a bus company in the north of England that was eventually bought out in the 1950s. But that is how my dad became an engineer, because he grew up literally next door to a bus garage and took apart engines when he was 8 years old.
Very cool.
I can't really follow that. Christina Spence, Director of Transportation here at SACOG. Happy to have everybody get together here. I don't really have any fun facts that I should share. So
You worked at a transit
I did. I
agency?
worked at a transit agency. I will say that. I've been in and out of the consultant and public sector worlds, and I did work for a transit agency, North County Transit District in San Diego, which was very, very eye-opening to actually work for an agency and understand all the struggles and fun stuff that happens on that side. So it's been helpful here.
Our board members are learning some new things about our SACOG staff. I love it. I love it. Jan.
Jan Clark-Kretz. I'm Vice Mayor of Loomis. I'm going to become mayor in December. It'll be my second time. I was mayor during COVID. Last time I've been on SACOG before. I'm currently on the Lunar Committee and was on it last time too. I'm so happy to be back because I love to drive, and I've been driving since I was probably 3 years old. My family has a golf course, and I learned how to do the stick shift and everything else. Took auto in high school, Del Oro, class of 81. Drag raced. I married a car guy. We love cars. I love to drive. I like to drive where I can get to A to B as fast as I can. So that's my transportation background.
Hello, Katie Maple, City of Sacramento Council member and Regional Transit Board member and Sacramento Transportation Authority Board member and a bunch of other boards as well. And also on the Lunar Subcommittee for SACOG. Do I have a transportation story? Not really. What's a fun fact about me? Most of these folks know, but my my dad was in the Navy, so I was a Navy brat, and I lived a bunch of places before eventually coming to California, including overseas and in Maine. We were just talking about driving over black ice and what that's like. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Alicia Garcia. I'm Director of Strategic Initiatives and Mobility for Paratransit Inc. Long title. I manage all of our mobility programs as well as work on business development alongside Tiffany. Let's see, a fun fact about me. My family is the first Hispanic Mexican family to come from Mexico and settle roots in Davis.
Nice.
So I'm Tiffany Scott. I'm the president and CEO of Paratransit. Prior to Paratransit, I was the transit manager in Elk Grove and actually worked with Jill when she was at the school district. Before that, I was in the city of Lodi, and I've actually worked for a COG before. I'm a native Californian. I'm 6th generation. I grew up in the capital, my family there, and I then not only worked in the capital here, but worked in DC. And my family fun fact is that on my grandmother's side, I am part of the Sites family, as in Sites Reservoir.
Oh.
And on my grandfather's side, I'm part of the McDonald family, and there's McDonald House in Bodie National Park. So we've been here a really long time.
Thanks, Tiffany. Great to see you again. Well, again, welcome to all our transit agencies. And next time you gotta sit amongst each other, we mix it all up. You don't have to be gathered in one corner of the room. But before I kick it back to Christina, I just want to say again, I hope this is only the beginning of the conversation. We definitely value our transit agencies and partners. And as a regional board, we recognize that we've got to connect all our parts of the region, and all of you, the transit agencies, are a huge part of that, right? In terms of mobility and getting around. And so we look forward to hearing from you today about your capital project priorities. But I hope what can come out of this is, and this is just me speaking, I don't know how James feels about it, but I'd love to see a long-term strategic plan, capital improvement program that we could all get behind from regional level and implement in the years to come. So Christina, I take it back over to you.
Sure, thank you. So I want to first start out, we are going to talk about capital needs here today, but I first want to recognize both SACRT and Yuba Sutter Transit for some federal grants that were just announced recently for the Lono program. While I'm sure that for you, I think it's filling the gap, which is really important. But that doesn't mean there aren't more needs. So that's a huge win for our region, but there's still a long way to go, I'm sure, for many of us. So, but do want to recognize that. That's awesome. Congratulations. It's great to hear that. Yeah. But so this is the second of these meetings where we've wanted our board members to get together with our transit agency so we can have a focused discussion on some of the issues that are, bubbling up with our transit programs. It's really important, I think, that we acknowledge a strong connection between our SACOG board and our transit agencies. As James has noted, many of you sit on board agencies, which is why we're here. So we want to make sure we continue that kind of collaborative discussion as we go through and try to figure out how we can address these challenges. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time hearing from each of our transit partners about some of the biggest capital issues that they're facing. Transit funding and transportation funding is never predictable, but it's incredibly volatile, I would say, right now as we move forward. Lots of rumors churning in the rumor mill about what may or may not happen at both the federal and state levels with transportation funds. So I think it's a timely and very good idea for us to really sit down and kind of unpack what some of the biggest challenges are moving forward. So we at SACOG and our board and transit boards can figure out how we can address some of these challenges from a funding perspective. So each of our transit agencies, I think, has a slide. Some might just be speaking without a slide. But I do ask that when you start, and we'll just kind of go organically around the room, just say your name again and who you're with so that Jessica can pull up the correct slide for each of you to talk through. So with that, I'll turn it over to our transit agencies. Do we want to start with you, Chris, just because you're right there?
Sure. We can do that. And why she pulls that up. Yeah, so thank you for having me here today. It's an honor to kind of talk a little bit about our capital projects and what we're working on and our transition to a zero emission fleet. So you can kind of see a sampling of the capital projects that we're working on. Let me back up and say that, investments in transit creates jobs. $1 often in capital projects creates 5 jobs. So we're seeing tremendous economic growth from a lot of these capital projects, a lot of job creation. Actually, 77% of federal money that goes into transit actually flows to the private sector through supply chain, through other contracts. So this is a sampling of some of our major capital projects that we have ongoing. I will say when Henry Lee, our GM, started about 9+ years ago, we had $0 to replace our light rail system that was over 30 years old. Currently, it's approaching 40 years old, but we've made, as you can see, tremendous progress in replacing vehicles. We've, a budget of $458 million to replace vehicles. We've secured funding for 59 light rail vehicles. We're hoping to get to 76. They're being built by Siemens here in South Sacramento. As part of that major light rail modernization effort, we have to renovate our stations. We've secured the full funding for these station renovations, as you can see, and we'll be moving to the blue line next year. The Dos Rios station, which you guys may be aware of, $42.8 million new infill station. It's under construction. We're hoping to open that next year. The streetcar project, $164 million. It's currently in the federal budget. We're going through the NEPA design process, and we're hoping to get a grant agreement next year. I will back up and say that all of these are really, you have to look for multiple grant opportunities to try to fund these. There's not a dedicated source that's going to fund these projects. So we've gone after state, federal sources and been very successful. We were able to get the rail car vehicle replacement grant for $45 million to replace light rail vehicles. We've gone after the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, a state program that every year has $400 million dedicated to it statewide. Solutions for Congested Corridors program, an SB1 program, also local partnership program. We've gone after RAISE grant, which is now Build, which was previously Tiger, but that helped fund the Dos Rios station. They say that's harder to get than to get into Harvard. So it really, you have to be creative to get these funds, and sometimes it's hard because you're going after grants for multiple years, as you can attest to, and the costs only go up as you have to as the years go by. So the streetcar being one of those that we've been able to secure. Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program for major federal expansion projects for rail and bus, rapid transit. It's the Capital Investment Grant Program at the Federal Transit Administration that will fund generally 50%, even up to 70% in certain instances for the grants. So we're hoping to get $85 million from the federal government to fund the streetcar project. We have 50 secure, 36.3 in the federal budget right now. That project would connect from SVS Station to the West Sacramento, to the Sutter Health Park in West Sacramento, about 1.5 miles. I'll talk a little bit more about zero emission bus maintenance facility. The state of California, and the next slide, but the state of California mandates that transit, actually you can go back and I'll get to it. Transit agencies must go zero emission. Our current bus maintenance facility is parked in Midtown. We park our buses under the freeway. The state of California has issued guidance that says that electric buses cannot be parked under their airspace or electric charging. And additionally, in the residential area there, we cannot do hydrogen. So we are in the process of having to relocate our bus facility as a result of the state mandate from CARB, but also the mandate from Caltrans of where we can park our buses. We have sought an exemption for the current buses we're charging down there. Wad I-80 Transit Center, we wanted to make that transit center more inviting, more a sense of safety there. So we've widened the plazas, we've fixed the stairwell. That project should be done sometime next year, where it's making great progress. Major transfer center for many of our regional partners that connect to a light rail right there with the bus facility. Horn Road, partially funded through the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. That's an infill station in Rancho Cordova. We're hoping to go after an Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program grant. That's another grant that's funded through the state cap and trade program. It gets $800 million a year now based on the new reauthorization. So a tremendous opportunity to go after grants that are going to fund pedestrian transit improvements along with affordable housing. You can get up to $50 million in award, with $35 million for the housing and $15 million for the transit pedestrian improvements. We have 4 applications in right now that they should be posting the recommendations probably in the next week or so. And then Strategic Growth Council will adopt those recommendations December 10th. But we're very hopeful that we can get some of the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant programs and be more successful in our region for that program. the Sac Valley Station relocation project, that's changing, relocating our light rail station at the Amtrak station to a north-south alignment that will help the city of Sacramento build their future bus mobility, regional bus mobility hub that they are planning. And then we have a number of planned projects that we are moving forward. Stockton BRT being one that SACOG has helped fund some of the design work, and it's really a partnership among the city of Sacramento, county of Sacramento, and SAC-RT. It's a unique corridor as it travels through multi-jurisdictions. I'll go to the next slide. I just want to comment more on the CARB mandate and bus replacements. Get it on my side so I can see it. So we have over 260 big bus in our system, about 40-foot buses. We are mandated by CARB to go to zero emission buses. That means a fuel source of either hydrogen or battery electric. Next year, if we purchase any buses, 50% of our bus purchases either need to be zero emission, either hydrogen or electric. We have significant costs for replacing our buses, significant need for replacing our buses over the next few years. We have to replace about 183 buses by 2029 as they approach their useful life, which is generally 12 years for a big bus. That's a significant cost. And thank you, Christina, for pointing out that we did just get some great news today that we got $39.7 million from the federal low-no program to fund 49 replacement buses for us of compressed natural gas. Yes. Low and no emission program. So it's a program that funds low and no emission bus facility and bus.
I know not what low no is. All right.
Neither did I until we just said it.
Yeah, so it's, and that's,
If you know, you know.
and that program was
Now you're in the know.
Thank you. Yes. So it's a federal program that funds, low and no emission bus purchases and facilities upgrades. It was significantly increased during the bipartisan infrastructure law. So they actually allocated over $2 billion in this allocation. I think previous rounds had about $1.5 billion, but prior to the bipartisan infrastructure law, it was about a $200 million program, if I want to say. We are fortunate enough to have gotten 77 million the year before that we're still trying to work with the administration to keep to help accelerate as I mentioned, we have to get out of Midtown to accelerate a new facility up at McClellan. So we are finalizing NEPA for that and hoping to really build out that facility because right now we only have one facility in Midtown where we have maintenance bays, a bus wash. We have 18 maintenance bays that we're going to have to replace basically for our service. And so we're going to build one in the north area, and due to deadheading, we're going to have to do one in the south area and range issues. We did a battery electric feasibility study that showed that only about 70% of our routes could actually be covered if they were battery electric without additional buses. And so that means we're going to have to buy 1.5 buses to do our routes, which means we have to find additional space to park those buses. So we're looking at hydrogen, which is, as you can see, is more on, hydrogen can cover the range issue, but the cost of a hydrogen fuel is about 3 times more expensive than CNG. And so if we were to do that right here, it would be about $3 million in additional operational costs just to run hydrogen buses. A cost of a CNG bus is about $750,000. Currently, a battery electric bus is about $1.4 million. A hydrogen bus could be up to 1.6, 1.7. There's only one manufacturer in the United States that has these. So we are struggling with how we're going to meet this CARB mandate, knowing that we have to obviously continue to keep our service reliable out in the street. But we are moving forward with the bus maintenance facility at McClellan. We were able to secure additional state funding. We're up to $100+ million for that site, assuming the federal money stays. And then we're trying to progress the Florin or south area, most likely our Florin light rail station for a second bus maintenance facility. We own 20 acres there. Matt can probably speak to it, but it is hard if you're trying to buy land. The federal government doesn't make it easy. We have to have NEPA clearance. We have to have the right size for a bus maintenance facility, which needs to be about 14 acres. Needs to be an area that's going to make sense for your routes, but also accepted by the community, zoned appropriately. So with that, I probably talked too much, and I will entertain any questions or pass along to my colleagues.
Yeah, hold on. So just because I want to give everybody a chance to go, but I also recognize you may have specific questions for the specific agencies. So two things. One, I'm going to ask you to police yourselves in terms of you've got a broader question, can we let them finish first? But if you have a agency-specific question, then go ahead and ask. And then thirdly, if we get too many going for one, I'm gonna stop it, right? Because again, I want to allow us to get everybody to get through one. So with that, sorry, Director Holshot, go ahead. You're gonna say something. Yeah, okay, good. I love it. Policing himself. This is fantastic. This is fantastic. All right, Vice Chair, yeah.
A couple, first comes to my mind is propane. We're not considering the use of propane, which would be a cheaper fuel and so.
So propane would not be allowed fuel under CARB's Innovative Clean Transit Rule, the ICT that mandates our change to zero emission buses.
Because it's like a point two, is it's the zero emission, is that the issue? And have we had any conversations to talk about that?
We have talked with CARB significantly and expressed our concerns with meeting certain deadlines, and there is an exemption process that we'll have to, and many transit agencies will have to seek, especially next year when the requirement goes up to 50% of your bus purchases be zero emission. So we are talking to CARB, and they've given us direction on how you can apply for certain exemptions, understanding that, many transit agencies are going to be in this boat.
Just the last one on, you said 12 years you're running that, and of course I'm going to flash back to a yellow bus. At 20 years, I'm hoping to replace a school bus. Same use, constant start, fact, probably heavier because we have to turn our bus off, unload kids, turn back on. 12 years, that's a new bus on my road. So is that something you're looking at to extend?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly retanked many of our CNG buses to extend their useful life. There's certain FTA rules for criteria of when it reaches a useful life. I think it's actually 500,000 miles in addition to the 12 years. So yes, we have extended number of buses, and with this grant we're getting, we're actually going to retire buses from 2008. So yeah, we do have some buses that are that old.
Any other questions for Chris? Did I see your hand go up? No, okay. All right, Autumn. Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right, Autumn Bernstein, YOLO TD. And while she's pulling that up, just maybe touching on some of the big picture policy questions that were before I dive into our specific situation. So the last time we met, you had a presentation from the executive director of the California Transit Association. At that time in the spring, he was talking about the governor's cap and trade proposal and the fact that it zeroed out funding for transit programs except for high-speed rail. And so there's some good news, which is that, of course, the new cap and trade authorization was passed, and it did restore funding for the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Grant Program, which Chris mentioned, as well as several other ones that we as transit agencies rely upon. So some great news there. But one of the things that he talked about as well was, can we get CARB to back off on this zero emission mandate to provide some flexibility? And there hasn't been a lot of progress on that. Several of us were at the California Transit Association conference down in Long Beach the week before last, and there was a really interesting session where we had the CARB program manager was in there, and Ray Tellis, the Region 9 administrator for FTA, was in the audience. And they were both basically kind of acknowledging that, yeah, we're in between these two competing forces, right? The state is telling us go zero emission. The feds are encouraging us to not to, right? And making it more challenging to pull down those funds. So it's a very interesting time right now to be kind of in that space, kind of trapped between a rock and a hard place, if you will. So we actually also applied for bus and bus facility or for low no. We are not in the know. We did not get funded this time around. So we just found that out yesterday, or actually today, but it was just announced yesterday. So the deficit on this slide is a little higher based on that, but we are also applying. So we applied for federal funding for compressed natural gas because that's what they're telling us. And then we're applying for state funding for zero emission, right? And so we're just kind of like, whoever's going to give us money, that's what we're going to buy, honestly, because that's what we need to do. So anyway, so that now just drilling a bit into our capital needs, obviously unlike SACRT, ours is a lot more simple because we just run buses. Our bus fleet is very old. Over half of our buses are above that 750,000 mile or 15-year mark. So we are running, or 12-year mark, excuse me. So we've got some old buses. We're trying to get them replaced. And so we have about, over the next 6 years, we need to about $77 million to replace and rehab our buses. Of that, we've got 12 million, including some of the SB 125 funding. This was the state recovery money, right? That we're using to help with that. We did have about $20 million in grant applications pending, one with the state, one with the feds. We just found out we're not getting the federal money. But we think we're in good shape that we may be getting that ASIC grant, which will help a lot. So fingers crossed, we'll know within the next few weeks on that. That leaves us about a $45 million deficit for our buses. And then on facilities, yes, luckily we don't need to construct a new facility for zero emission, but we do need to modify our existing facility. We need to work with PG&E to make sure we're actually able to get electrons onto the site. You know, we need to expand our transformers, add additional chargers. We do currently have charging capabilities for 6 buses. As part of the Causeway Connection service that we launched with UC Davis and SACRT back in 2020, we got chargers and vehicles for free. The chargers are still working, the vehicles are not. Both SACRT and YOLO TD have had to ground that fleet of Proterra buses. They were one of 3 battery electric bus manufacturers. They went bankrupt. They were bought out by another company, Phoenix Motor Coach, but we can't get parts for those buses. So they're the newest buses in our fleet and we can't use them. But we still have the chargers, so that's good. But we need to expand our charging capability to meet CARB's zero emission mandate. And that's what you see in terms of the $12.3 million price tag, just for upgrading our existing facility, not having to buy a property and, you know, create a brand new facility from scratch like our counterparts in Sacramento and Yuba Sutter. So our total deficit is, based on the news yesterday, between $65 and $78 million. For context, our annual budget is about $20 million. So this is triple our annual budget is our deficit for the next 3 years in order to meet this zero emission mandate and keep our buses running. And with that, I will hand it over to Matt.
Thanks, Autumn. Well, any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, any questions for Autumn? For now, okay, great. Turn it over to Matt. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again. Matthew Mock, Executive Director, Yuba Sutter Transit Authority. Since you adopted your blueprint this morning, she puts a slide up. I thought I would have some fun with my board members and do a 25-year outlook on projections. And I thought they were going to be really astounding numbers until I heard the first 2 presented. So I'm actually feeling a little bit better. But I will add, you know, I would focus more on the 5 years ending 2030 or the next 5 years, so to speak. Beyond that is pretty speculative, I will say. But it gives you a sense of a transit agency that has currently 53 revenue vehicles. So relatively speaking, a small agency that serves a small urban and rural area. And these numbers take into account, of course, a transition to zero emission over time. For those who are not aware, the ICT does apply to everybody. As a public transit operator, we get a little bit of time on the front end. Our purchase requirement starting in 2026 through 2029 is at 25% of all buses that we purchase, unless we're able to get an exemption, which we're talking about right now. So again, the big capital project for us on the horizon is our facility. We house everything in one place: administrative, operations, maintenance, bus parking, all in one facility. We have a property that we've owned for a few years now, and we are planning to have a purpose-built facility for the first time in our history to accommodate our future needs. So right now, that budget stands at about $65.5 million. And as of the announcement that came out a couple of days ago, we theoretically are funded, which is astounding to me. And I wish I could take credit for it. I cannot, because a lot of that was done under my predecessor's leadership, and he should take the credit for that. But again, the last $12.7 million theoretically were awarded with from a federal grant, bus and bus facilities grant, in 2025. And I will say, I wouldn't feel too bad, because I believe that's the 4th attempt at that grant before we were actually granted it. So stick with it, Autumn, excuse me. Why do I always do that? I don't know. So again, fleet replacement costs, we're actually assuming a small reduction in our fleet to begin with in terms of heavy duty buses, in part because of those ICT regulations in the beginning and just because of some service plans we have that have us focusing a little bit more on demand response in the short term. I will say with respect to the point that Christina brought up, all of the mumblings at the federal level about the loss of discretionary funding, that would be pretty catastrophic for us. Historically, we have relied pretty heavily on federal discretionary capital funding for our major capital projects and to maintain a state of good repair. And if that goes away, for instance, and everything becomes formula, for instance, or the funding is reduced, again, I couldn't tell you with any certainty how we would maintain a state of good repair on our current fleet, let alone expand it and meet the state's zero emission requirements. So as was well pointed out by my colleagues, the zero emission transition, it's a higher relative capital outlay, not only for infrastructure, but because the vehicles unfortunately are more expensive. The promises of those vehicles being less expensive, in fact, the market has not borne that out. So it's still realistically, even for a 35-foot low floor heavy duty vehicle that we use on one of our 6 local fixed routes in Marysville and Yuba City, is $1.4 million essentially, before you put any customization on that bus. And as was mentioned before, our most recent zero emission conversion study had us needing to expand our fleet by roughly 30 to 40% in order to make the same, what we refer to as the pullout, right? The same amount of buses to actually get the service on the street on a daily basis that we do now with internal combustion engine vehicles. So I'll leave the rest of any time I had for Q&A and the rest of my colleagues. Thank you for your attention to this.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Matthew on this one? Okay, next up.
Well, that was all great. I have nothing written down. Again, this is all new to me, kind of a last minute thing, but I can tell you this, smaller city, smaller agency, a lot smaller needs. Obviously, there's always needs for money. There's just the way it is. We bought 5 new Ford E-Transit vans that we put in service in June. We got those through SB 125 monies.
I apologize. Would you please remind me where?
Oh, I'm sorry. Greg Bowen, City of Auburn. Sorry.
It's Auburn.
Yes,
Okay, thank
yep,
you.
sorry. So we did buy 5 new E-Transit vans. We have them in service. We have 7 total in our fleet, 7 total vehicles. So 5 are electric, 1 is CNG and 1 is diesel. We are phasing out the CNG. That's going to go away next year. So we're almost solely going to be electric. To go along with that, we need to update our corporation charging infrastructure, which will start in February. It's going to take about 3 months to finish. We're adding 4 chargers, some solar. We're hoping for some batteries if we can make the money work. But just hearing what you guys are going through, man, we've got it easy in Auburn. So I'm thankful for that, being that I'm learning and new to this. So thank you.
It's all relative.
Thank you.
Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian James. I'm the Executive Director with El Dorado Transit up in beautiful El Dorado County. We have some projects we've been working on recently. Bass Lake Road Park and Ride was a project that we're just finishing up the last steps of that, landscaping part of that. But we've been using it for about a year now, just finalizing the last bit of it, getting that going. Tap to Ride equipment installation, we'll have the same kind of system that SACOG has in place, where people will be able to use their credit card to pay for boarding the buses. That was installed and we're just finishing up the testing right now. That should be going live here quickly. Bus parking lot rehabilitation, including ZEB underground infrastructure. It was time for us to redo our bus parking lot. It was cracking, falling apart. It was time. With that, we decided it was a good idea to go ahead and do the infrastructure underground, put in conduit and everything so that as we go towards zero emission, that we have all that infrastructure in place. We don't have to go back and re-tear up what we just finished. And so that is underway right now. And for those projects, we're able to get grant money to cover those costs. along with the purchase of one electric Gillig bus. We partnered with PG&E to have them go ahead and run the electricity and everything for battery electric into our facility. With that, they were willing to put $350,000 toward the project as long as we had at least one bus that could do the charging. Along with that, we were able to get a grant to pay for that bus. And so we are moving forward with going ahead and putting in that first bus. We'll put in that first charger. It'll all tie into the new system that we'll have in place. So upcoming projects, the zero emission is huge for us. We anticipate over the next 15 years, the total cost for vehicle replacements will be about $67 million. It would have been about 26 million if we didn't have the zero emission bus mandate. So that added another $41 million to the project. So that's a big issue that they're dealing with. Of course, we'll go for grants, go for whatever we can to pay for that. But as long as that mandate is there, it's a big ticket for us. So I mean, our total budget a year is $10 million. So it's huge for us. Facility improvements of El Dorado Hills Park and Ride, Cambridge Road Park and Ride, and Placerville Station. Just some things that need to be updated, asphalt that's fallen apart, things like that. So that's about $2 million there. We also have service additions that we are working toward. 2 commuter route buses, 1 Tahoe route bus potentially, and microtransit for an operating cost of approximately $1.5 million. We did downsize with COVID when that happened. There were some services like the commuters. We were running 11 buses a day, morning and afternoon before COVID. Right now we're at 6 and we're bumping that up to 8. So just to keep up with demand for the commuters. But if the state decides to go back to the office more, we may have to relook at that. And that would make a difference on that. But we're hoping that just doing the 8 would do it. Honestly, how we schedule them is a little better than what we had before COVID. So I think we can be a little more efficient than we were. Future needs. If we do expand in the future, we are going to have to look at possibly expanding our administration building a little bit and our maintenance building. Biggest concerns are just trying to figure out how we're going to pay for, especially that zero emission transition and potential reductions in federal and/or state funding. We don't know what's going to happen with that. And so I lose sleep over that. So any questions?
Any questions for Brian? Brian, you missed it before you came in. I was telling you, we're gonna hold off on overarching questions and.
I think he
give everybody a
said,
chance.
Bruce, police yourself.
And it was aimed at Bruce, but everybody heard. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Next up over here, Tiffany, you want to go next?
For the paratransit slide. So paratransit, I didn't do the numbers thing, but ours for us is kind of a bigger issue. For us, it really breaks down to the need for capital, facility repair, and then vehicle. And for us, vehicle's a little different. So our facility is over 20 years old. We not only are located there, but SACRT has part of the SACRT Go fleet there, about half of their fleet. We also have the entire fleet for United Cerebral Palsy. We do maintenance services for 14 different nonprofits. And so we have their fleets on site and fueling. And so the pavement and security upgrades, we are in Florin Road. We've had issues in the past with catalytic converter issues. And so really for us, the big issue on facility is to repave the facility to a higher PCI to improve the pavement on there, because we're bringing in vehicles that are much heavier than were anticipated and what prior use was. And also to upgrade the facility and on the security side. On the bus side, we run our fleet is entirely cutaways or the smaller vehicles. So for us, the ICT rule is a little different because CARB has acknowledged that as of now, there's not a good alternative. The range is about 60 miles before you idle or use lifts, which, as you know, everything we do involves idling and using lifts. So it's been a strong issue. There are some versions with hydrogen that are out there, but the cost is also significant. The useful life on a cutaway is 5 to 7 years. So at a cost that could double or triple, it's even of a worse dynamic than a large bus. So we're looking at the other issue for us is that we can't consider en route charging. So because our buses go different places every day, you can't do a long route service for the charging, which is an additional issue. It means we have to basically charge everything in the yard based on the size of our fleet. We currently have over 400 vehicles in our yard at any time. So just the amount of power that would take, we're surrounded in a residential neighborhood, is its own challenge. But the big issue that we're really addressing isn't going to just be our fleet. So paratransit's unique. We not only operate our vehicles, which is roughly 50 vehicles, we have nearly 75 vehicles we make available to partner agencies for them to transport individuals to keep them off of the paratransit ADA network. Pre-COVID, for every ADA ride that was provided, 2 passengers were removed from the ADA service by our partners. So now post-COVID with the decline, it's about 1-to-1. But what we're also seeing is that with the federal changes, like to the 5310 program, it used to be that Caltrans used toll credits so that the nonprofits didn't have to have any matching funds. This year, they introduced a 15% match. It may go back to the 20. Many nonprofits don't have the matching funds. And so we're seeing conversations increase from them that they're not going to be able to access new vehicles. And so that in turn puts more people coming to us to look for us to pass down vehicles. But the ICT has a significant impact on what it would do to those agencies continuing to provide transportation. The big issue there would be on the operations side, because if they don't provide service, those clients would likely fall back to the ADA network. And that's not just in Sacramento. I know Autumn has a lot of operators in her region who take those ADA trips off. And if those passengers come back, they're the most expensive passengers that exist. And so the operational cost of them having these fleet needs is huge, and the impacts. So that's our big challenge, is not only how do we grow our service. If the range stays where it is, we'd have to look to double or triple our fleet. But also we're really monitoring what's happening with our partner agencies and their fleet needs. We did go to CNG. Some of our partners were able to accept kind of these hand-me-down buses with CNG because they're able to fuel at our facility or have access through Elk Grove or others through our fueling network. We're partnered with Clean Energy. But for a lot of them, they don't have the resource to be able to fuel. And so that's the other thing that's going to come down, is that a lot of our systems and smaller agencies we work with, they're going to be subject to these same rules when they're available. And as those vehicles age down, it could wipe out a lot of your social service, your care home transportation needs, which is going to be a huge financial pushback onto the network of people who are desperately going to need services to get to medical appointments and other things, who, if that vacuum happens, the impact to the public transit service will be huge. And with the ADA network, you have to provide every trip requested. And I know Santa Rosa had an issue probably a decade ago where they actually had to cut fixed route to meet their demand response need because the dollars were too tight. And that was FTA's responses: we'll start eliminating your fixed route until you can meet your paratransit need. So for us, this is something we're really looking at, because it's not just our fleet and how we grow it and fuel it, but we're seeing this already, the request coming with the impacts of what's happening through the state and the 5310 management of the program. And we continue or believe that the toll credits will continue to not be available, which means that the matching funds are going to become a huge challenge for a lot of cash-strapped agencies.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Sounds like a rosy future.
Any questions for paratransit at this moment?
I think we also have
Okay,
Jeff
I was just
Flynn,
say, Jeff, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff Flynn with Unitrans, which is the City of Davis and UC Davis's fixed route public transit provider.
Oh, okay, great. Well, happy to hear from you.
Great, thank you for inviting me today. I'm sorry I was late. I did have a slide.
She's working on it.
So Unitrans is, again, the fixed route public transit provider in the City of Davis. We only serve the City of Davis. We are projected to carry record high ridership this year of 4 million people, exceeding our pre-pandemic ridership. So we're back to where we used to be. We're the fun facts. We're the 3rd most crowded bus system in California. So there's San Francisco, there's Anaheim because of Disneyland, there's Unitrans, and then there's LA Metro. That's the ranking of crowded bus systems in California. So we're very highly utilized. And we have the 2nd highest ridership in the SACOG region, 2nd, of course, to SAC-RT. So we rely, as everyone else, very heavily on federal funds to fund our capital program as well as our operations. Through the IIJA, we got a nice plus up in our funding because of our very high ridership. That of course comes to an end at the end of the next year. And with that, we expect the federal funding to go back to pre-pandemic levels, or with the latest kind of federal rumor mill, maybe even less than that. So it'd have huge implications for our capital program and our operations possibly. Of course, if federal funding goes to its pre-IIJA levels or lower, we would put as much of the money into operations to preserve operations, which would then again just defund the capital program. So currently our 10-year capital deficit is projected to be about $45 million, heavily fleet items. Right now, Unitrans, a third of our fleet is zero emission. So we really went all in on this technology early. Davis has a very supportive community and city council and university around this type of technology. So we have a 3-phase electrification project. The first phase of it for a third of our fleet was completed as of September. So it was 14 buses, 14 charging stations. We're in engineering for our second phase, which will be for 16 buses. Hopefully we'll get environmental clearance for that in the new year. But there's a big chunk of that project which is currently funded through a 5339 discretionary grant, which we are not confident is going to remain in place once the FTA reviews that for obligation. So our electrification program, we believe, is kind of on questionable footing right now for the second phase of that project. So the second phase, again, is 16 buses, 16 charging stations. If that discretionary grant stays in place, that is a fully funded phase. Of the 16 buses, though, only 2 of them are currently funding and in contract. The 14 remaining are not and are part of that capital deficit that's there on that slide. Davis really, it's a small city, small footprint. We have short routes, short cycle times. So we don't have the same range anxiety that a lot of our other providers in this region who do a lot longer routes do. Today's bus, electric bus, already does what we need it to do. We can pull it out in the morning at 6 a.m., pull it back in at 11 p.m., and we don't need to charge midday. So again, Davis is really ideally situated for this technology and pursuing electrifying our fleet if the funding can be secured and it can be maintained going forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. So at this time, I just want to ask any of our board members if there's any questions for any of the transit agencies or the overarching topic of transit in this region. I'm happy to open it up. I hear some things that can be helpful to you, and so I know the transit agencies and SACOG are working on an MOU and continue to work that. But given that half this board represents transit agencies, it seems prudent that this board can help in the overall mission of all our transit agencies. Personally, my thought is, what I notice is everybody's operating, just in their individual regions. But if there's a regional connection that we can make, we not only better serve the region because maybe I want to get up to Roseville easier, but maybe there's economies of scale that can help with the operations, legislation, and other policies that could be helpful to everybody. And so I'd like to ask staff, to look into just that, is where can we find commonalities at a regional level and develop a plan and an advocacy strategy around that. And then maybe there's a near-term legislation, maybe it's relief from the current requirement for these, to me, like requiring you to electrify your fleet or decarbonize your fleet. Meanwhile, when the federal government doesn't support you at all, and I think we know that a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions come mostly from single car vehicles. So that requirement right now just seems like especially burdensome. And so maybe that's just one example. And I'm sure we can find others, but that's an example of what I'm suggesting we ask staff to look into. Yeah, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. So the hard part here is that we're seeing these mandates by CARB that are mostly, from what I'm hearing, is driving this, a lot of these deficits. Certainly some of them would probably exist even if CARB didn't have the requirement. So the hard question and the really unpalatable question is, we have to reduce service. We have to say, okay, we can't afford to do this. And so we're going to have to reduce service. And that's a reality that we should probably have a plan in place that says, hey, if we don't get the money, we don't have the funding, then this is the next step. This is how we're going to reduce service. That's the hard part, is we got to figure out how to live within our means.
Well, maybe three, oh yeah, sure.
Like I said, I do work in this profession a little bit. This is crazy. We are literally talking about the Titanic and the deck chairs right now. You have two kind of parallel problems. You have this EV mandate, which makes no sense right now. And you have an operational problem too, which we're not even talking about today. And that is, without some funding coming, I always forget the Capitol's over there. Yeah, without some solutions happening on transit funding, all sorts of people are we won't have to worry about the kinds of buses we're running, because the transit operators are all gonna be starting to go out of business. Paratransit operates our buses up in Lassen County, God bless them. They just got hit with this enormous, I'm sure the other transit agencies may be having this problem, this insurance thing. And we're not even talking about the buses, and we're not talking about we're talking just about insuring the darn things. And it went up some ridiculous amount of money. I think as a policymaking board, we need to make some decisions on what we think we are before we, and I agree with you. Regional cooperation, regional thinking, yeah, those are all the words. But we as a board should be thinking about marching over there and saying, because all they do is point to CARB, like CARB is some disembodied head that doesn't, that just operates on its own. And it does, unfortunately, to a certain degree. But all those people on CARB got appointed or whatever by somebody. And we need to go over there and say, you guys need to stop this now, because there won't be enough money. You'll take all your operating money to try to meet the EV mandate. If you could, you can't really do that, but if you could, you would take all your resources just to make buses happen. And you should try finding an electric bus that has automatic chains on it. It don't exist. And from what I'm telling from the industry, it ain't gonna exist for a while because there's no reason for it. So I think that's the tough decision. The tough discussion we need to have now, because this is a creeping problem. And they need to solve two problems. They need to come up with a plausible funding for operations. Because I don't know, up in my slice of heaven, we'll be able to make our transit run on SB 125 for a while, because we didn't have to buy buses because we got a delay. But that to me seems to be the course thing that we ought to be having the real constructive discussion about right now. And that is lobbying. And I've got to believe, except for people that are totally tied to the electric, and I drive, as James pointed out, I drive an electric vehicle. I love the darn thing. We got to our meeting today in an electric vehicle. Love the darn thing. Goes like heck. And there's an EV industrial complex out there, trust me, especially on this transit thing. They're bellying up to this bar because, as you noted, every one of those buses costs what, a third more, a half more than its internal combustion alternative. But that to me should be the discussion. The discussion should be, we need to grab some of our peers maybe throughout the state, because I don't know what the other big cogs are talking about right now, but my guess is they're all having the same conversation before this thing hits the wall. Because next year, I understand from operations, it gets real ugly down here in Sacramento. So anyway, that's me.
No, I totally appreciate that comment, and that speaks to the advocacy strategy. What I'm talking about is let's find what can help you in the near term, right? So such as relief from this or altogether. I did like, Chris, your slide about fuel agnostic. I mean, and today I understand today hydrogen is 3 times more costly, but will it be later? I mean, so these are the things, you know, you all are on the front lines of the industry and the technology that's changing, you know, quickly. And so, so this strategy is an evolving thing, right? But in starting, you know, the first step is looking at how we can help today. And then I'm gonna get back to Director Schaefer's point too, is that service cuts, I mean, I just view that as, you know, kind of the butcher knife versus the scalpel. And maybe you all have done this, but part of the component is route optimization. You know, we had to do that in the city before we turned our services back over to RT, and maybe there's updating to that or something. And then again, getting back to economies of scale, is there things that insurance or, you know, other things that we can pull together that would make things cheaper for you? So these are just examples, but basically it's a comprehensive overview or examination of how we can improve operations, make them more cost efficient, and delay, you know, certain legislation that hampers you operationally and from a capital perspective for the near future.
I say, I think I have too many thoughts in my head.
Oh, sorry.
And I have to go back to my school bus world to do this. So we did the same thing. We're the first district to purchase first 12 electric buses. Elk Grove School District is 320 square miles. It's a third of Sacramento County. I got a bus now that can go 70 miles. That doesn't work in our world. And we're so open. We've run CNG before. In fact, I know we helped you guys out when you first, E-Tran got their first buses when we were run CNG. We've got, you know, first particular track. We've done everything possible that you can do. So we get these 12 buses and they never went on the road because the only person that manufactured at the time was not a school bus manufacturer, but somebody that got in the business for this, and they sat forever by the time we got them, and then they're out of business now. Now regular school bus manufacturers are making them, but that was millions of dollars that was wasted. But I look at that, and then I look at Rockland, 20 square miles would be the perfect place to do electric, similar to Lake Davis. You got it, we can do it. You go up into the foothills, Auburn, no, they can't go to Forest Hill on an electric bus. They can't. It's too far, and there's a hill issue and then the distance. So we want to embrace where you can, but I think we have to be that joint voice, because I remember the same thing when it came up with our white fleet, and I had to convert 500 white fleet vehicles and make the deadline. And I went to my board and I have to have this, and we do it. And then CARB said, yeah, nobody made it. So we're going to extend that deadline for a couple of years. And that's exactly the message that I think we have to get there. Nobody, not overwhelming, you're not going to make it. You can't do it. So let's be realistic and have that conversation. Of course we embrace. I can tell you that if I pull a school bus out of service, that's 60 cars that just went back on the road because they're packed. So did we gain anything? Because I can run a propane bus at 2% NOx, but it's not zero emission, but I just put 60 cars back on the road. So what are we doing? If we're here to try to improve air quality, let's work together. And any district here that has a school in your city or county knows your worst traffic is at your schools for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes afternoon. So if we can do something to keep all those cars off the road, we win. But we have to have a voice, because when you go to CARB, and I've done those hearings so many times, and you get up and talk, and then they say, thank you, public comment, and here's what we've decided. There's no conversation in between. So as a joint voice, of course we're embracing it. We want to do this. Let's be realistic. How can we make it happen? And you're not going to make these deadlines. You're not. So I think that's the message that has to come across. We're embracing it. We want to make it work. How can we make it work?
So for the larger agencies, what's the role of on-demand? And does that help fill the gap? I don't know about your ridership, but, and then we have Placer Transit and Roseville Transit, which gather there by Sunsplash and bring folks downtown and bring them back out of town. So we do have, and we're working on a bus rapid transit from Lincoln down to light rail with a charging station at the Galleria. So, but I'm curious because we in a rural, semi-rural, area, we utilize that.
Yeah. So we have our ADA paratransit service that is now SACRT Go, which is now well over 100% of what it was pre-pandemic. Same for our fixed route bus. In 2018, we launched our microtransit on-demand service and expanded to 9 various zones, geographical zones throughout Sacramento County. We did get a grant to launch that program from the Sacramento Transportation Authority. Last year, at the beginning of this year, we transitioned the program to a eligibility focused program, more for those who are disabled, seniors, or low income, because we were seeing a lot of unique users that were maybe abusing the system with monthly passes, and we weren't experiencing maybe the ridership we wanted, the demographics we wanted, and it was becoming far more expensive to operate that system. So we ended up no longer operating in-house. We contracted out. It went from basically a $9 million operation a year to $1.5 million operation a year, maintained the 9 zones, but reduced the eligibility requirement. Certainly less ridership as a result of it, but I think it's serving that first last mile need in certain communities for sure.
I would just piggyback. Microtransit has become a big part of our service in Yolo County, but there are similar challenges that we see, particularly where we have overlap between fixed route and microtransit. We really want to encourage people to take fixed route because it's just so much more cost effective. The cost per rider is just so high for microtransit. So we're really using microtransit to serve communities like Knights Landing and Winters, where you don't have the demand, you don't have the high volumes for fixed route to really work most of the day, at least. But with our new short range transit plan, we are actually dialing back microtransit in like the city of Woodland and reinvesting those resources into fixed route and just kind of trying to have our microtransit be that really for folks who don't have other options, for people who maybe can't walk to the nearest bus stop, for example, in order to be as cost effective as we can with our dollars.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
I'll just add it back on microtransit. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons from designing the 9 zones. The size of the zone is going to matter. The amenities within the zone obviously matter. I think our number 1 destination was actually Walmart's, and then healthcare facilities. But if you're going to design it very large, you're going to need more buses, or you're going to have significant wait times. We had wait times that were exceeding 45 minutes, and that's not going to be acceptable for someone who's trying to get an on-demand ride. So just being cognizant of that, and I think we built some zones that may be too unwieldy, too large. So I would recommend keeping it to kind of more focused zones.
By the way, I'm still waiting for microtransit in Elk Grove.
I'll give you a transit manager to design the Elk Grove section, but yes, talk about adjustments.
Just my little plug.
You can carpool with you.
Yeah. You got a great bike too. The one that I wanted to bring up. So one success we had was the Green Means Go program. This is a program that this SACOG region developed to try to get at rebalancing commercial corridors, but for housing. We took it to the legislature, and it was met with, well, what about us? And down here in Southern California or wherever else besides the state. But we did get some money for pilot funding, and it started to prove successes of it. My point being is that I know all of you are part of the statewide transit organizations. Everybody's have the same problem with these laws you just talked about, capital project service, all of that. So we're not saying that, we're going to solve everything today, but I do feel like if we focus on our region and work together collaboratively, I think we can come up with some things that work for our region. And that concept can be sold to Director Colucci's point across the street for a pilot that perhaps can lead to something bigger. So that's all I'm saying is like, we're not gonna shoot for the moon or anything today, but I do think we can get at some of these near-term issues if we consolidate, work together, and then make our pitch across the street. So that is the idea behind the concept of let's figure out what we can do and develop an advocacy strategy around that. Yeah.
Tiffany.
I was just gonna say, I know it's a place that SACOG has started, but I think one of the places that's really gonna come to fruition is on the fueling side, because if hydrogen does become the path that emerges, it's really expensive to build a facility. You can't put them everywhere. And so I think we kind of saw it when a lot of us transitioned to CNG. Everyone was going in for these grants and we were all competing against each other, which we've heard at Cap to Cap and others, when we compete against each other as a region, we just knock each other out. And so I think there is something to be said about if we're gonna go in a certain fuel path and we're gonna look at major charging facilities or major fueling facilities, does it make sense for us to build fewer of them, but make them bigger and co-located where I can access them and RT can access them and YOLO can access them, and we can make it bigger of a bigger scale, but then we're going for one big grant that we're matching dollars to? Because the scale of us doing a project and each one of us doing a project is exponentially more expensive when you start it from start to finish. So I think it's a small piece, but it starts to be places where it's gonna take regional coordination to talk about utilities and planning and who pays what. But I think those are the places where we are gonna hit challenge, which is even if we had the vehicles, the infrastructure is so hard and expensive to build, and to build it at scale. If you're gonna build a hydrogen fueling facility, it's so complicated. To make it big enough for 2 or 3 agencies is not the issue. It's getting even the footprint for one. And so I think that those are absolutely places where this could be a huge help, because then it also helps us know, okay, how are those costs done? How can we all go in together for after, and it makes it a bigger grant. So now it becomes eligible for some of the bigger pots where if we're competing as a smaller agency, we're going after smaller discretionary funds. If we're going as regional fueling, we can go for some of the bigger grants because they are bigger dollars, but we're coming in with one big project. So I do think that that approach, especially in that place, is a way to talk about that. And while the buses are part of it, if we don't have the fueling infrastructure, it's kind of chicken or egg. Do you get the bus? But to get the right buses, the fueling on the hydrogen side, the network's not there. But we know that the range is there. So we're kind of tied on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And also add that if it becomes more regional, you start pulling in more interest, right? You're pulling people out of RT's jurisdiction and YOLO's and El Dorado, whereby you may not use it in El Dorado if you live in El Dorado, but you might be concerned about it getting in different parts of the region. And that's where you start building this bigger and I'll dare say shinier object that people do just get excited about. So I've harped on that enough. Yeah. Amber, sorry. Autumn, sorry.
It's a Amber, Auburn. I respond to all of them really. April. Anyway, I kind of wanted to shift gears and just kind of throw another idea on the table, which, you talked about regional collaboration. Right now in the Bay Area, the 5 counties of the Bay Area are working together to do a sales tax measure for transit. It's going to be on the ballot next November. They worked together to sort of identify what their needs were, went to the legislature, got through Scott Wiener and got approval to put this thing on the ballot. I'm not sure that that's the kind of approach we would necessarily want to take here, but I think I know a number of counties are looking at, sales tax measures. Sacramento is looking at one. Placer had one that just failed several years ago. We're starting to have conversation about one. So thinking about as a region, can we work together on this? I think is something that's interesting. That there may be certain advantages of thinking about local funding at a regional scale rather than a local scale. And I think that would be an interesting place for SACOG to explore if the board thought that was worth investigating.
If I can just piggyback off that to give you all a preview, that was not a setup here. But Chair Soon, since you and a couple of SACOG board members, we went to Seattle early this summer and we looked at their transit system. You had asked, well, what would make voters motivated, right? From a transit infrastructure. And so we partnered with Valley Vision and we're out in the field and have done a lot of polling across 6 counties to ask the questions across all 6 counties. What would be compelling for voters in terms of transportation, infrastructure, transit, housing? And so stay tuned. We'll have those results back in December.
Oh, great.
Yeah, just a quick question. Like going back a few years ago, we had a third-party consultant that identified the sites for electric, hydrogen fuelings for the trucking, right? For that, I mean, going back to what Tiffany is saying, I mean, if we could collaborate, because you mentioned like the size of the footprint. Well, one of the properties that was identified was originally 25 acres, but there's 75 acres that's contiguous. So 100 acres, you have big enough site for the hydrogen fueling component as well. It's how do you bring transit to come there? Because the site that we're working on now, and nobody else would be able to use that. But if you would think big picture, like what she's mentioning now, to bring that trucking industry and stuff, because it wouldn't be self-sustainable for the trucking industry either. We only have like a dozen hydrogen fueled trucks in Sutter County right now because there's no closest fueling is Oakland, right? But I don't know, but maybe we just kind of circle back to that because I think that was they gave us some options or whatever, but nobody's been able to pursue it because it was just for that industry.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thought. With that study, I know that there have been some grant applications that were kind of public-private partnership type applications or more driven on the private side to get some of those sites going across the, up and down, particularly the I-5 corridor. But it is an interesting thought that if we know that some entity or company is going to be coming to try to get some funding for it somewhere at a big federal grant, to include the transit partners and see, is this something that we can collaborate on? And is there a way to involve other things that we might not have thought about before? Because, while it might not serve every single transit agency, there's likely to be some, and you just need that one initial one to kind of start and to show that it can be successful. And then I think there's other ways we can figure out how to strategize, but we can take a look at that study and see if there's some opportunity to be more proactive about it too on our end.
Yeah.
I think with that too, I think it also extends the idea of what does it mean for the school districts? Going back to remembering when we were trying to fuel and we ended up building a public-private partnership fueling station in Elk Grove, which ironically paratransit uses now. But transit tends to always kind of be separated from school bus, but a lot of the regulation moves in similar paths. And so I think there is something to this idea of there's trucking's trying to figure it out, transit trying to figure it out, and then you have a huge bus fleet that makes public transit be dwarfed in the school buses, and they need to fuel and they're co-locating it. So I think the more that we can open the conversation, we're all trying to solve the same problem in our own rooms.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to say, okay, who are all the people who are dealing with this fuel technology? What are you looking at? What does your demand look like? Because I think in silos, we're all going against each other, but we're also only looking at our quantities and you're trying to make it pencil. I think there's something about the fact that even if we're going first, which transit tends to go first, we did with diesel, because they can mandate us to do it before they can give it to truckers. We know they're coming right behind it. So I think there's this question of if it's not happening to you and now it will be shortly, how do we, when you put all of it together, it's a lot of vehicles. And as you said, it's a lot of, if the school districts can't run service, it dumps it onto the public transit providers to get them there, because if they're not in their car, they're flooding the transit agencies at capacity and you see peak time crush. So we aren't separate from each other.
Question.
I apologize. I'll take mom to the doctor in a little bit, so I can speak out, but I think the one piece for all of us to think about too is if I'm Joe Bob off the street and I just walk in and I look at these total numbers all together, and then I'm gonna say, how many people are riding? How much is that for each person? here? So we have to have an answer, because if you look at that right now, I guarantee you, we would not want to be out there sharing that publicly as a message. So I think that's a piece that we have to have some answers for and explain why it's worth that kind of investment.
Director Hume.
Absolutely. Amen. Preach, sister. Number one, but I want to go back to what Autumn, Amber, April, Auburn said, because if we continue chasing the funding, that's like the drug addict chasing the dealer that got them their first high, right? And they're always trying to get back to that original high. What we need to do is what Director Clarici said.
Yep, of course.
Stand up to the people who are putting these unfunded mandates on our agencies that are causing the cost of doing business to get so far out of whack, it makes the taxpayers mad, and it does a disservice to our riders. Because now we're having to cut routes just to do less with less, rather than more with less. And so think about this for a second. You have CARB, unelected, unaccountable agency, issuing these mandates that then have ramifications that cause Caltrans to say, oh, all that cheap real estate underneath our freeways, you can't do your business there anymore. So now we have to go find more expensive options. And then the other thing relative to efficiency of the scale is I think the other trap that we get caught in is continuing to utilize old models rather than keep pace with new efficiencies. And so, if you do any kind of travel down in Latin America, South America, you see private buses that have no route numbers. I mean, they have literally the names of the cities they serve scrawled on the sides of the buses. They are shoulder to shoulder of people, and some of them are nothing more than minivans. And so I think if you look in obviously Tiffany and Chris are going to know this, but when you break down the kind of two camps of transit, of frequency versus coverage, if we are constantly chasing coverage, we will never be able to provide the frequency and the backbone, like get you from this point to that point service that is going to cause that sort of ridership numbers that the vice chair was just mentioning. We have to somehow be able to justify what is the cost per rider to provide this service. Or we simply throw all of the financial assumptions out the window and we say transit is simply a social service and therefore it is a program that should be funded on the backs of taxpayers.
Yeah.
Right? Like either we're trying to do something that is quasi cost neutral or we're not.
Yeah, and I think the public has not accepted the social aspect, right? And so I'm getting at a vision that we need to communicate, convey, hopefully pitch, sell, convince the public on, and that. But you need to build it from the foundation up. Optimization of the routes, efficiencies, cutting. When I say cut service, I'm saying optimization of routes is the term I'm choosing. But so that you could show the public we've done the homework, and this is how. Maybe we don't have a ridership per se, but this is what we can do. And to Director Hume's point, these laws are making us do this or less. So it's a comprehensive thing we're proposing, and I'm suggesting also a different, grander vision. When people are on vacation, if they're in South America, if they're in Europe, they're in places that they're riding the transit system. Well, if ours was like this, I would ride it. So why don't we have a vision of something like that, right? Why do we hamper in every single jurisdiction in the community, everybody trying to, like Tiffany's point, in their own, silos, doing their own thing, trying to fumble along? Well, we need to go bigger, not smaller, but it's gotta be justifiable, right? Again, you heard me say the costs and efficiency and everything has to be justifiable. So anyway, I know I've spoken a lot on this, but if there's any other comments, yeah, Director Lauren.
I didn't think mentioning that I was from Southern California would have any relevance with anything today, but when I heard one of the commenters say that it's Southern California that always stops the progress. There are many rural cities and rural areas in Southern California. Many of them are very much like ours. They're not all LA, they're not all Anaheim. I think it would behoove us, if we're going to have a state approach, to identify those areas, who are their state senators, who are their assembly members, and start talking, have a strategy to talk to them, because that way we can get a more people supportive of where we want to go. But don't write them off as there's a line and then Southern California is not going to help. Like we just have to go find them. And I think we would be successful at that. Thank you.
Christina, you need anything more from us?
No, unless somebody has something, but I do just want to acknowledge this has been an incredibly wonderful discussion to hear. I did hear SB 125 mentioned, and I do want to just, acknowledge that, that is something that is very active right now, particularly at SACOG, and is going to serve really as a basis for us to understand how we can help all of you around this table and those that aren't. Moving forward with a potential vision, with a potential understanding of the regional capital needs, with a potential advocacy strategy about how we can attack that. We're currently working on a required part of that funding, which is the long-term financial sustainability plan. We have a consultant doing it. We're working to get a really good understanding of what the financial capacity and financial issues are for both operating and capital with all of our partners from a regional perspective, so that we can use that as a way that start to kind of brainstorm. What are some innovative ways that we can approach this? How can we help support you? We're not, operators, we don't deliver service, But there are ways that we can help you all think differently about, you know, maybe the problems that you're seeing and the strategies that could be viable for you moving forward. So we're really excited about what that could be. That is going to come to you, to our board progressively over the next few months. It needs to be wrapped up by June. So we're hoping that by June, we'll have a really good foundation to start to have some of these conversations to start to talk about what are those things out there that we can do. But I also just really want to acknowledge and you know, I heard a lot of collaboration here today, and the spirit of that, I think, is something that we're going to be able to, you know, leverage and continue working with as we start to talk about how we can tackle this, because it's not an individual operator problem. It's really a regional problem. And, you know, with our partners in PCTPA and EDCTC as well, who both aren't here, you know, the three of us together to support all of you is going to be a priority for us over the next, you know, 1 to 2 to 3, 5 years. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned June, because I was going to ask if we can do a report back to the whole board about today and what we're embarking on. That would be a great time.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to just thank everybody for being there, especially our transit agencies for coming and sharing with us. Yeah, it was a great conversation as well. So I know it won't be the last, but this is just great. James, do you want to say? All right. Well, with that, we'll give you back 15, 17 minutes more to your day. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.